It's funny the things you remember, not the big dramatic moments, not always. Sometimes it's the quiet details, the smells, the way the light hit a certain patch of dirt. For me, it's the silence. A silence so profound it still echoes in my bones years later. I was 26 then, just old enough to think I knew a lot, but still young enough to make some pretty dumb mistakes, and I made a big one. Back then, my life revolved around maps and trails. I worked for a small outdoor outfitter shop in Flagstaff, Arizona, guiding day hikes and sometimes multi-day backpacking trips through the canyons and high plateaus. It was good work, honest. I loved the smell of pine needles underfoot, the crisp air, the endless blue sky. I wasn't some thrill seeker, just a guy who found peace in the wilderness. I'd spent countless nights under the stars, alone or with a small group, always careful, always prepared, or so I thought. This particular trip was a solo one, a reconnaissance mission, really. A new client had requested an off-the-beaten-path route to a remote plateau, a place few tourists ever saw, known for its unique rock formations and breathtaking views. My boss, Frank, had given me the green light. "Just make sure it's safe, Ben," he'd grunted, adjusting his spectacles. "And for heaven's sake, take the satellite phone. Cell service out there is a myth." I'd nodded, already mentally packing my gear. The plateau itself wasn't named on most maps. We just called it the Stone Table. It was about 3 hours' drive from Flagstaff, mostly on paved roads, then another hour on a rough dirt track that would chew up anything less than a four-wheel drive. After that, it was a 4-mile hike uphill through scrub brush and sparse ponderosa pines. Isolation was its main draw and its biggest danger. I set out early on a Tuesday in late October. The air had that crisp, dry bite that meant winter was just around the corner, but the sun was still warm enough to make the climb pleasant. My old Toyota Tacoma, a trusty battle axe of a truck, rattled happily over the dirt track. I remember listening to an old blues playlist, the guitar riffs filling the cab as the landscape slowly transformed from open range to more rugged, rocky terrain. I passed the last sign of civilization, a weathered cattle gate that clearly hadn't been opened in years. And then it was just me, the truck, and miles of whispering wilderness. I parked the Tacoma in a small, concealed hollow at the base of the plateau, a spot I'd used before. It was just a little dip, protected by a cluster of gnarled junipers, perfect for keeping the truck out of sight. I double-checked the locking hubs, made sure my pack was secure, and did a quick mental run-through of my gear. Water, purification tablets, first aid, extra layers, compass, GPS, satellite phone, headlamp, knife, emergency flare. Everything was there. I was a professional. This was routine. The initial part of the hike was familiar, a well-worn game trail that switchbacked up a relatively gentle slope. I made good time, my boots crunching on loose shale and dry leaves. The sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue stretching endlessly above me. Hawks circled lazily on thermals, their calls echoing across the vast expanse. It was a perfect day, too perfect, perhaps, in hindsight. My plan was simple: reach the plateau, spend a few hours mapping potential campsites and scenic overlooks, then head back down before sunset. I wanted to be back at the truck before dark, ready for the long drive home. No need to spend the night out there alone if it wasn't necessary. My mistake, my initial vulnerability, wasn't that I was alone. I often hiked alone. It was the casual overconfidence that crept in, the sense that I knew this place, that nothing could surprise me. I didn't rush, but I didn't linger either. Just methodical, efficient work. About an hour and a half into the hike, I reached a point where the trail flattened out onto a wide, exposed ridge. From here, the true majesty of the Stone Table revealed itself. It wasn't a mountain, but a vast, elevated expanse, like a gigantic natural altar rising abruptly from the surrounding landscape. The top was dotted with ancient, wind-sculpted rock formations, pillars, arches, and twisted spires that looked like something out of a fantasy novel. I stopped for a moment, taking a long drink from my water bottle and just breathed in the immensity of it all. The air was still and cool up here. I closed my eyes, savoring the peace, listening to the gentle sigh of the wind through the sparse pines that clung to the edges of the ridge. And that's when it happened, or rather, when it didn't happen. I opened my eyes, a faint prickle of unease brushing against my skin. The wind was still there, I could feel it, a soft current against my cheek. But the sound of it, it was gone, muffled, as if a thick blanket had been thrown over the entire landscape. I tilted my head, listening harder. The rustle of dry leaves underfoot, the distant hum of insects, the chirping of the small ground birds that were always flitting about, all gone. Even the hawks, which had been so prominent just moments before, were nowhere to be seen or heard. It was as if someone had hit a mute button on the world. My first thought was that something was wrong with my ears. Maybe the altitude. I'd never experienced anything like it before, but hey, there's a first time for everything. I wiggled my jaw, swallowed hard, even tried to pop my ears, but nothing changed. The silence wasn't just a lack of sound, it was an active presence, a heavy, pressing blanket. It felt unnatural. The air itself seemed to grow thick, almost velvety, absorbing every potential echo. The brilliant blue sky, which had seemed so welcoming, now felt vast and indifferent, pressing down on this strangely muted world. My heart, which had been beating a steady rhythm of effort, now gave a little lurch. This wasn't right. This wasn't normal. The stone table, usually a symphony of subtle nature sounds, had turned silent, completely, utterly silent. And standing there with the vast, quiet expanse around me, I felt the first cold tendrils of dread begin to curl in my stomach. It was the opening spark, the moment the wilderness, which I thought I knew so well, showed me a face I'd never seen before, a face that held its breath. The tendrils of dread, once cold and hesitant, now tightened their grip. My breath hitched, a small, involuntary sound that seemed to vanish into the oppressive stillness before it even left my lips. This wasn't just quiet, it was a vacuum, a place where sound went to die. My heart hammered against my ribs, each beat a frantic, thudding bass drum in my own head, the only sound that seemed to exist. I pressed my palms to my ears, then quickly dropped them. It didn't help. The silence wasn't external, it was internal, all-encompassing, a pressure in my skull. My mind raced, searching for an explanation. Altitude sickness? No, I'd been higher than this countless times. A sudden change in atmospheric pressure? Possible, but this felt different, too profound, too absolute. My eyes darted around the ridge. The ponderosa pines, usually whispering their secrets, stood rigid, their needles motionless. The scrub brush, typically alive with the rustle of unseen creatures, was still. Even the air, which had been carrying a gentle breeze, felt dead. The light, though still brilliant, seemed to lose its warmth, casting long, stark shadows that clung to the ancient rocks. It was as if the world had paused, holding its breath just for me. "Hello," my voice was a croak, barely audible, swallowed immediately by the thick air. The sound was flat, lifeless, like dropping a stone into deep mud. It gave me chills. I tried again, louder this time, forcing the words out. "Is anyone there?" Nothing. No echo, no human reply, not even the distant cry of a bird or the buzz of an insect. Only the frantic beat of my own heart remained, a lone, desperate rhythm in a silent universe. I fumbled for my satellite phone, pulling it from its case on my belt. My fingers felt clumsy, thick. The small screen glowed, but the signal indicator was blank. No bars, not even the faint searching symbol. Nothing. That was impossible. Frank had drilled it into me. The sat phone always worked, even in the remotest spots. It was a direct line to the global network, not reliant on local cell towers. I rebooted it, waited, watched the screen cycle through its startup sequence. Still blank, just a small digital X over the signal icon. A fresh wave of panic washed over me. This wasn't just weird, it was actively dangerous. My primary emergency communication device was dead. Was it the phone, or was it something about this place? I pulled out my GPS unit. The screen flickered to life, showing my precise coordinates, a clear map of the plateau and the trail I'd taken. Good, at least I wasn't lost, but the thought offered little comfort. What good was knowing where I was if I couldn't call for help, if the very air around me was actively hostile? I forced myself to take a deep, shaky breath, trying to push down the rising tide of fear. I was a professional. I was prepared. I had first aid, water, extra layers. I knew how to navigate. I wasn't helpless. This was just an anomaly, a strange natural phenomenon it had to be. My eyes swept the horizon, looking for any sign of a dust devil, a distant storm, anything that might explain the atmospheric strangeness. Nothing. The sky remained a vast, indifferent blue. Reluctantly, I started moving again, my boots crunching on the loose shale, the sound shockingly loud to my own ears, yet still seeming to vanish almost instantly. It was like walking on a giant sound-dampening sponge. My initial plan was to reach the heart of the plateau, a wide, open expanse where the most dramatic rock formations stood. I kept telling myself I needed to complete my mission, that turning back now would be an admission of cowardice. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. Some perverse curiosity, some primal urge to understand what was happening, was pulling me forward. The path grew steeper, winding between colossal sandstone pillars that jutted skyward like petrified giants. The wind, which had been gently sighing moments before, was now completely absent. The air was utterly still, heavy and thick, almost difficult to breathe. I felt a growing tightness in my chest, not from exertion, but from the oppressive silence itself. As I drew deeper into the plateau, the rock formations seemed to grow more elaborate, more alien. What had once looked like whimsical natural sculptures now appeared almost menacing. A massive archway, which I'd always admired for its elegant curve, now loomed like the entrance to some forgotten tomb, its shadows stretching long and dark. The spires, usually majestic, now resembled jagged, broken teeth. Every twisted crevice, every shadowed overhang seemed to hold a secret, a watchful eye. I tried to keep my focus on the task at hand, mentally logging potential campsites, noting areas of particular geological interest. But my senses were on high alert, scanning, searching, desperate for a sound, a movement, anything that would break this suffocating stillness. Each crack of a twig under my boot, each rustle of my pack was a jolt, amplified in the profound quiet, only to be absorbed moments later. About 20 minutes after the silence had fallen, I reached a wide, flat basin ringed by the most impressive formations. This was the heart of the stone table, the area I most wanted to survey. As I stepped onto the flat ground, my boot sank a little deeper than expected. I looked down. The ground wasn't dirt or rock here, but a fine, reddish dust, incredibly soft and yielding. It was like walking on velvet. The dust seemed to absorb not just my footsteps, but all vibrations, all echoes. My eyes were drawn to the center of the basin, where a particularly massive formation stood. It was a pillar of rock, perhaps 50 feet tall, narrower at the base and widening dramatically towards the top like an inverted mushroom. Its surface was scarred and pitted, dark and ancient. It had always been a striking landmark, but now it felt different. It felt resonant, as if it was the source of the silence or perhaps its keeper. As I drew closer, a flicker of movement caught my eye. At the base of the colossal pillar, half obscured by a low-lying ridge of rock, something was glinting. It wasn't natural. My guide's instinct, honed by years of finding lost water bottles and dropped sunglasses, kicked in. My unease sharpened. This was a place few people ever came. The client wanted an off-the-beaten-path route for a reason. What could possibly be glinting out here? I approached cautiously, my hand instinctively going to the heavy sheath knife on my belt. It was a stupid gesture, I knew. What was I going to do? Fight a strange light? But the primal urge to be ready, to be armed, was overwhelming. Rounding the small ridge, I saw it clearly. It was a metal box, roughly the size of a small cooler, but sleeker, with no visible seams or hinges. Its surface was a dull, non-reflective gray, almost black, but somehow it still managed to catch and refract the muted light, giving off that strange glint I'd seen. It looked impossibly smooth, like polished obsidian, and it definitely wasn't natural. My mind raced. A geological survey marker, a lost piece of equipment from some long-forgotten expedition, but it didn't look like any government or scientific equipment I'd ever seen. It was too alien. No logos, no identifying marks, nothing. Just that perfectly smooth, seamless surface. I knelt beside it, my fingers hovering inches above the cold metal. It radiated a faint chill even in the cool autumn air. I tried to push it, to lift it. It was incredibly heavy, solidly rooted to the spot, as if it were part of the very rock it rested upon. I felt a prickle of alarm. It was too perfect, too out of place. This wasn't just a dropped cooler. This was something else. As I stared at the box, a strange sensation began to creep over me. It was a buzzing, a low-frequency hum that seemed to originate not from the box itself, but from deep within my own skull. It started faintly, a whisper at the edge of hearing, then steadily intensified, pushing against the oppressive silence. It wasn't a sound I could hear with my ears, but a vibration I felt in my bones, a pressure behind my eyes. It made my teeth ache. The buzzing grew, becoming a palpable thrumming that resonated through the reddish dust beneath my boots, up through my legs, and into my entire body. It was a resonant frequency, a wave of energy that seemed to be activating something dormant within me. My head began to ache, a dull throb that quickly escalated into a sharp, piercing pain. I clutched my temples, squeezing my eyes shut, trying to block out the sensation, but it was inside me, inescapable. Then, as suddenly as the silence had fallen, the buzzing stopped. The abrupt cessation was almost as jarring as its onset. The pain in my head receded, leaving behind a lingering dull ache, but the profound silence returned, even heavier than before, as if it had been waiting patiently for the buzzing to finish its work. My eyes snapped open. I was still kneeling by the box, but something had changed. The air felt different, thinner, sharper, tingling with an invisible energy, and the box, the perfectly smooth, seamless surface of the box now pulsed with a faint internal light. It wasn't a glow on the surface, but a light within it, like looking into a dark, deep pool that held a hidden luminescence. The light was a soft, shifting amber, barely perceptible, but definitely there. And then I saw the symbols. They weren't etched or engraved on the surface, but seemed to emerge from the light within the metal, shimmering into existence like delicate, intricate patterns of pure energy. They were unlike any language or script I had ever seen. Geometric yet organic, flowing curves intertwined with sharp angles, all bathed in that soft amber glow. They pulsed rhythmically, slowly shifting, morphing, as if they were alive, communicating. My mind, for a brief, terrifying moment, tried to rationalize it. Holograms, some advanced projection, but no, it didn't feel like that. It felt ancient and impossibly sophisticated. A cold dread far deeper than any I had felt before settled in my gut. This was not natural. This was not a misplaced scientific instrument. This was something else entirely, something beyond my comprehension. I wanted to run. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to get away, to bolt back down the mountain, to escape this place and its impossible silence, its alien object. But I was frozen, mesmerized, captivated by the pulsing light and the shifting symbols. My rational mind, the part of me that navigated treacherous trails and planned emergency protocols, was overwhelmed. My primal brain, however, was screaming in alarm. As I stared, the amber light intensified slowly, steadily. The symbols pulsed faster, a chaotic dance of alien glyphs. The air around the box grew perceptibly colder, and I could see my breath, a faint cloud in the still, heavy air, despite the lingering warmth of the afternoon sun. The chill was not natural. It was a focused, unnatural cold radiating from the box. Then one of the symbols, a particularly complex one resembling a coiled serpent, began to expand, growing larger, brighter, separating itself from the others. As it expanded, the seamless surface of the box seemed to ripple, to soften, as if the solid metal was becoming fluid. The serpent-like symbol became a focal point, drawing my gaze, compelling my attention. And then it began to open. Not like a door, not like a lid, but more like a flower unfurling. The metal, previously so solid, now flowed away, receding inward, revealing an opening, a void of absolute, impenetrable blackness. It was darker than any shadow, deeper than any night. It seemed to absorb all light, all presence, creating a terrifying contrast with the pulsing amber symbols that still danced around its edges. A new sensation began to emanate from the opening. It was not a sound, but a feeling. A subtle pull, a magnetic draw, a gentle suction that tugged at my clothes, at my hair, at my very essence. It was incredibly faint, but undeniably there, a whisper of a force trying to draw me closer into the black abyss. My knees, which had been frozen, suddenly gave way. I collapsed onto the reddish dust, unable to tear my eyes away from the burgeoning darkness. My heart thundered, a frantic drum solo against the silence. My mind screamed, "Run, Ben, run," but my body refused to obey. I was trapped not by physical bonds, but by a terrifying, inexplicable fascination. The opening continued to expand, slow and deliberate, until it was roughly a meter wide and a meter high, a perfect square of absolute blackness, framed by the pulsing amber symbols. And from within that blackness, something began to emerge. It was impossibly slow, like a dream unfolding in molasses. First, a faint shimmer, a distortion in the absolute darkness. Then a shape began to materialize, not stepping out but seemingly coalescing from the void itself. It was slender, elongated, and seemed to bend light around it, making it difficult to discern its exact form. As it emerged further, I could make out a limb, incredibly thin, jointed in ways that seemed unnatural, flowing, and graceful despite its unsettling proportions. It was dark, a shade of deep, polished obsidian mirroring the surface of the box itself. It didn't reflect the muted light of the plateau, it absorbed it. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't an animal. This wasn't human. This was something from another world, another dimension. The cold radiating from the box intensified, wrapping around me, seeping into my bones. The hair on my arms stood on end. Slowly, deliberately, the entity continued to emerge. It was tall, impossibly so, reaching perhaps 7 or 8 feet in height, but slender, almost skeletal. Its limbs were long, ending in delicate, multi-jointed digits that looked more like intricate roots than fingers. Its body was smooth, chitinous, segmented, reminiscent of an insect, but with an elegance that defied any earthly comparison. It had no visible head, at least not in the way I understood heads. Instead, a series of smaller, overlapping plates formed a rounded, featureless dome at the top of its elongated torso. No eyes, no mouth, no sensory organs I could discern. Yet I felt an intense, undeniable sensation of being observed. It was as if its entire form was a single, vast sensor taking me in, analyzing me. The silence, which had been a heavy blanket, now felt like a living entity itself, a co-conspirator to this unholy emergence. Every nerve ending in my body screamed in protest, but I couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even blink. The entity stepped fully out of the black void onto the reddish dust. It made no sound. Its movement was fluid, graceful, almost ethereal, as if it were gliding rather than walking. It turned its featureless dome towards me, and in that moment I felt an overwhelming surge of pure, unadulterated terror. It wasn't the fear of a bear or a mountain lion. It was a cosmic dread, the terror of facing something utterly beyond human experience, something that fundamentally rewrote the rules of reality. It raised one of its impossibly long, multi-jointed limbs. The hand at the end of it, a delicate, root-like structure, extended towards me. It wasn't menacing, not overtly threatening. It was an invitation, a slow, deliberate beckoning. And in my mind, a thought not my own began to form. It was not a voice, but a presence, a pure, unadulterated intent, cold and vast and ancient. It pulsed within my skull, mirroring the previous buzzing, but now it carried information, fragments of understanding that were not mine. "We have waited," the thought was clear, precise, yet devoid of emotion, "for the one who would hear." My heart hammered so hard I thought it would burst. My vision began to tunnel, the edges of the world blurring. My body trembled uncontrollably, a fine tremor that shook me from head to toe. This was too much. The silence, the box, the symbols, the entity, the voice in my head, it was shattering my reality, ripping it apart at the seams. I squeezed my eyes shut, desperate to make it disappear, to return to the world of pine needles and blue skies. When I opened them again, the entity was still there, closer now, its extended limb still beckoning. And from the black void behind it, another shape began to coalesce, then another, a slow, terrifying procession of these impossible beings. The cold emanating from the box was now searing, an icy burn on my skin. I could feel my muscles locking up, my limbs turning stiff. The reddish dust around me seemed to be swirling, caught in an invisible eddy current, tiny particles dancing in the frigid air. The first entity was right in front of me now, its root-like hand just inches from my face. I could feel its presence, a hum of immense, incomprehensible energy. I stared into its featureless dome, searching for something, anything, a hint of recognition and emotion. There was nothing, only that vast, ancient intent. The thought voice returned, stronger this time, not in words, but in pure concept. It was a deluge of images, of feelings, of information that slammed into my mind like a tidal wave. I saw stars not as pinpricks of light, but as vast, swirling galaxies. I saw ancient civilizations rising and falling on worlds I couldn't comprehend. I felt the immense passage of time, stretching back further than human history, an endless tapestry of creation and destruction. And then a singular image, clear and sharp, burned itself into my consciousness. It was a symbol, an elaborate, multi-layered design, strikingly similar to the one that had expanded on the box, the coiled serpent. It wasn't just a symbol, it felt like a key, a fundamental principle, an anchor in this maelstrom of alien thought. The entity's hand reached out, brushing against my forehead, right between my eyes. It wasn't a touch, not truly. It was a permeation, a subtle push. A surge of energy, cold and electric, coursed through my body. My vision exploded into a kaleidoscope of colors and forms, too bright, too fast, too complex to process. I felt a tearing sensation, as if something within me was being pulled, stretched, rewired. My muscles convulsed. My breath hitched, then choked. My body arched, a silent scream trapped in my throat, lost in the overwhelming silence. I felt a connection forming, a link between my mind and this impossible being, between my small human consciousness and an ancient cosmic intelligence. It wasn't painful, not in the physical sense, but it was agonizingly invasive. I felt exposed, vulnerable, my entire life, my every memory, every thought laid bare and open. I was being scanned, analyzed, understood in a way no human being was ever meant to be. The images, the concepts, the alien wisdom continued to flood my mind, a torrent of incomprehensible data. I saw the stone table not as a geological formation, but as something else entirely, a nexus, a beacon, a long-dormant portal. I saw the box as a lock and these entities as its guardians, waiting for someone to stumble upon it, someone to trigger its awakening, someone like me. And the voice in my head, now more a chorus of countless ancient presences, spoke again, its intent clearer, colder than ever. You have the resonance. The key is within you. My body spasmed, a final, desperate tremor. My eyes rolled back in my head, my consciousness fraying at the edges. I was losing myself, dissolving into this alien interaction. The world around me spun, the amber light of the symbols, the obsidian forms of the entities, the profound, suffocating silence. It all merged into a chaotic, terrifying symphony of the unknown. Then, with a sudden, violent jolt, the connection snapped. The light receded, the images vanished, the cold eased, and the entities seemed to blur at the edges, less solid, less real. I gasped, a raw, ragged sound, as if I was surfacing from an endless ocean. My body collapsed back onto the reddish dust, every muscle screaming in protest. I lay there, chest heaving, vision swimming, trying to piece together what had just happened. My head throbbed, a dull, insistent ache. The silence was still there, but it felt different, less oppressive, more like a witness. When I finally managed to push myself up on shaky arms, rubbing the lingering phantom cold from my forehead, I saw that the entities were gone, vanished. The black void that had served as their gateway was rapidly shrinking, the seamless metal surface of the box flowing back together, slowly swallowing the absolute darkness. The amber symbols, too, were fading, retracting back into the metal, leaving behind that perfectly smooth, dull gray surface. Within moments, the box was closed, seamless and inert, as if it had never opened, as if the entire terrifying encounter had been nothing but a hallucination. Only the intense cold, which still radiated from the spot where the box sat, and the lingering, raw ache in my skull told me it had been terrifyingly real. I scrambled backward away from the box, my movements clumsy and panicked. I didn't stop until my back hit the base of one of the smaller sandstone spires, gasping for breath, my mind reeling. I squeezed my eyes shut again, trying to regain control, to make sense of the incomprehensible. I opened my eyes. The silence was still there, but it seemed to hold a new quality, a deeper meaning. It wasn't just an absence of sound anymore, it was a presence, a watchful, patient observer. And then I felt it, not in my ears, not in my mind, but deep in my chest, a faint vibration, the symbol, the coiled serpent. It wasn't just an image anymore, it was inside me, a dormant seed humming with a faint, resonant energy. The key. They said the key was within me. What did that mean? What had they done? My hand instinctively went to my chest, over my heart, as if I could feel the symbol pulsating beneath my skin. A new, terrifying thought emerged from the chaos in my mind. I was no longer alone on this mountain. And I was no longer just Ben, a simple guide from Flagstaff. Something fundamental had changed. Something had been awakened within me by those impossible beings. I had to get out of here. I had to tell someone. But who would believe me? And even if they did, what could they do? The wilderness, which had always been my sanctuary, had just revealed itself to be something far more ancient, far more terrifying than I could have ever imagined. And I, Ben, had just stumbled into the heart of its unimaginable secret. My legs, stiff and trembling, finally cooperated. I pushed myself up slowly, painfully. I didn't dare look back at the innocuous-looking metal box. My only thought was escape, to put as much distance as possible between myself and that place, that impossible encounter. But the silence, that profound, unnatural silence, followed me. And I knew with a chilling certainty that whatever had happened here, it wasn't over. It had only just begun. My legs, stiff and trembling, finally cooperated. I pushed myself up slowly, painfully. I didn't dare look back at the innocuous-looking metal box. My only thought was escape, to put as much distance as possible between myself and that place, that impossible encounter. But the silence, that profound, unnatural silence, followed me. And I knew with a chilling certainty that whatever had happened here, it wasn't over. It had only just begun. The descent from the stone table was a blur of frantic motion and heightened senses. Each crunch of shale under my boots, each rustle of dry leaves, was amplified to an almost unbearable degree in the pervasive quiet, only to be swallowed moments later by the oppressive stillness. My heart hammered, a relentless drumbeat against my ribs, a stark contrast to the world's muted breath. I stumbled more than walked, my body still protesting the invasive connection, my mind a chaotic storm of fear, confusion, and a terrifying, unwelcome awareness. The air, though no longer searingly cold, still felt thin, charged with an invisible energy. I could feel the coiled serpent symbol, not just as a concept, but as a faint, vibrating presence deep in my chest. It was an anchor, a burning ember in the wreckage of my understanding, and it filled me with a primal dread. What did they mean, the key is within you? What had been awakened? I didn't look back, not once. My gaze was fixed on the narrowing path, on the promise of the tree line, the familiar landscape that would lead me away from that impossible basin. The colossal rock formations, which had once been magnificent, now seemed to twist and writhe, their ancient forms imbued with a malevolent watchfulness. Every shadow held a hint of movement, every gust of non-existent wind carried a whisper of alien intent. My guide's instinct, usually a source of calm competence, was now a frayed nerve screaming warnings that were both irrational and terrifyingly real. The descent was brutal. My muscles, already fatigued from the earlier climb and now racked with residual shock, burned with protest. My mind, overloaded with incomprehensible images and sensations, struggled to maintain focus. I tripped, scraped my knee on a jagged rock, but barely registered the pain. The urge to flee, to outrun the silence, was paramount. As I scrambled down the switchbacks, the vast, indifferent blue sky slowly began to shift, bleeding into hues of orange and purple. Sunset. The thought spurred me to a fresh burst of desperate energy. I had to reach the truck before dark. Being out here in the open, alone, with the memory of those obsidian entities fresh in my mind, was unthinkable. The idea of navigating the rugged trail in the encroaching gloom, with the oppressive silence as my only companion, filled me with a cold terror that eclipsed even the shock of the encounter. The familiar game trail offered little comfort. It felt altered. Every tree, every bush, every loose stone seemed subtly changed, infused with the strange energy that now thrummed within me. Or perhaps it was I who was changed, my perception irrevocably warped. I found myself scanning the undergrowth with an unnerving clarity, noticing patterns in the shadows, shifts in the rock face that I'd never registered before. It was as if a new layer of reality had been peeled back, revealing an intricate, unsettling complexity. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I burst through the last cluster of ponderosa pines and saw the dip in the landscape where I'd left my Tacoma. A wave of profound, soul-deep relief washed over me, so potent it almost brought me to my knees. The truck, a tangible link to my old life, to normalcy. It stood there, a rusty beacon of hope, nestled safely among the gnarled junipers. I half ran, half stumbled the last few yards, fumbling for my keys even before I reached the driver's side door. My hands were shaking so violently I almost dropped them. The familiar metallic click of the lock disengaging was the first actual, tangible sound I'd registered in what felt like hours, and it was a jarring, almost painful intrusion into the profound silence. I practically fell into the driver's seat, slamming the door shut behind me. The sudden enclosure, the familiar smell of old coffee and dust, was a balm. I gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, and just sat there for a moment, chest heaving, trying to catch my breath, trying to process the impossible. The silence, however, wasn't banished by the truck's metal shell. It pressed in, muffling the world outside, creating a strange, isolated cocoon. I glanced at the dashboard. The clock read 6:17 p.m. The sun was already dipping below the western horizon, painting the sky in fiery streaks. I had barely made it. The thought sent another shiver down my spine. My satellite phone, still clutched in my hand, was dead. The screen was black. I tried to turn it on, pressing the power button repeatedly, but nothing happened. It was utterly inert. A cold wave of helplessness washed over me. My lifeline completely gone. I remembered Frank's words, the sat phone always worked, but it hadn't, not out there. Then a new wave of panic hit me. What if the truck wouldn't start? What if it had followed me? What if the silence had affected the engine, the electronics? The irrational thoughts swirled, amplified by my terror. I jammed the key into the ignition, my hands still trembling. I turned it. The engine sputtered, coughed, and then blessedly roared to life. The sound was deafening, a sudden, glorious cacophony after hours of profound quiet. It vibrated through the steering wheel, through the pedals, through my very bones. I nearly cried with relief. It was a normal sound, a human sound, and for a moment it pushed back against the oppressive stillness. But only for a moment. As the engine settled into a steady idle, the silence seemed to rush back in, damping the sound, making it feel distant, removed. I threw the truck into reverse, backed out of the hollow, and began to churn down the rough dirt track. The tires crunched on gravel, the suspension groaned, the old blues music, which had been playing when I parked, now a jarring, too loud blast from the speakers. I slammed my hand down on the volume knob, twisting it to silence. I couldn't bear it. The raw, unfiltered sound was too much for my assaulted senses. I needed quiet, or at least the normal kind of quiet. Not this kind. The drive was agonizing. The dirt track, usually a familiar annoyance, now felt like a treacherous, endless tunnel. The headlights cut through the deepening gloom, illuminating a path that seemed to twist and turn with malicious intent. Every shadow cast by the ancient junipers and scrub oaks seemed to writhe. Every rustle of the non-existent wind felt like a presence. I kept glancing in my rearview mirror, half expecting to see the obsidian entities, their impossibly slender forms gliding silently behind me, their featureless domes fixed on my escape. The coiled serpent symbol in my chest continued its faint, persistent hum. It was no longer just a memory. It was a part of me, a low-frequency vibration that resonated with something in the landscape. I could feel the stone table behind me, not just as a place on a map, but as a living, breathing entity, an ancient power that watched my retreat. The connection, once established, was not easily broken. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, my eyes darting from side to side. The adrenaline coursing through my veins made my hands unsteady, my vision jumpy. I fought to stay focused on the road, knowing that one wrong turn, one moment of distraction, could send me careening off the track into the unforgiving wilderness. Hours crawled by. The dirt track gave way to the paved road, a welcome sign of civilization, but the relief was short-lived. The silence, that profound, otherworldly silence, still clung to me. It didn't matter that I was driving 60 miles an hour down a paved highway. The world outside the truck felt muffled, distant, muted. The occasional passing car was a ghost, its sound fading before it reached me. The scattered lights of distant ranches were dim, almost unreal. My mind raced, cycling through every detail of the encounter. The shimmering symbols, the buzzing in my skull, the chilling touch, the deluge of alien wisdom, the terrifying invitation. Was I going crazy? Had the altitude, dehydration, or some unknown toxin finally pushed me over the edge? I wanted to believe it. I needed to believe it. But the persistent hum in my chest, the raw ache in my head, and the unwavering silence that enveloped me refused to let me off the hook. What would I tell Frank? Hey boss, sorry I didn't get those campsite coordinates. Got sidetracked by some 8-foot-tall, obsidian-skinned aliens who came out of a metal box and stuck a cosmic serpent symbol in my chest. The thought was absurd, laughable if it wasn't so terrifyingly real. No one would believe me. They'd think I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. The lights of Flagstaff finally appeared on the horizon, a glorious, sprawling tapestry of human habitation. The sight brought a fresh wave of relief, quickly followed by a new anxiety. How would I reintegrate? How could I pretend to be normal, to go back to guiding hikes, to talking about pine needles and trail markers when my reality had been irrevocably shattered? I pulled into my driveway just past 10 p.m. My small house, usually a comforting sanctuary, felt alien, distant. The porch light, usually a welcoming glow, seemed harsh, intrusive. I killed the engine, and the truck's sudden quiet was instantly swallowed by the omnipresent silence. My chest tightened. It was still with me. Stepping out of the truck, the mundane sounds of the neighborhood, a dog barking in the distance, the faint hum of a refrigerator from inside my house, the gentle rustle of leaves in my front yard were all strangely muted, as if heard through thick glass. It was as if the world was playing a quiet game, carefully hiding its true volume from me. It wasn't the absolute vacuum of the stone table, but it was far from normal. I locked the truck, a familiar routine now imbued with a sense of desperate clinging to normalcy. My hands were still shaking. I fumbled with my house keys, my movements clumsy and uncertain. Inside, the familiar scent of old books and brewing coffee. I had started a pot before I left. A hopeful gesture for my return was comforting, but the silence remained. The hum in my chest, the coiled serpent, was a constant, unsettling presence. I didn't bother turning on many lights, preferring the dim glow from the streetlights filtering through the windows. I felt raw, exposed, every nerve ending screaming. I stumbled into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and stared at my reflection in the dark window. I looked like hell. My face was pale, streaked with dirt, my eyes wide and bloodshot, dark circles beneath them. There was a faint red mark on my forehead, right between my eyes where the entity had touched me. It was small, almost invisible, but I could feel it, a subtle heat beneath my skin. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to wash away the lingering cold, the phantom touch. It didn't work. The cold was inside me, an icy burn in my very core. The symbol pulsed. I wandered aimlessly through my small house, my apartment, unable to settle. The familiar objects, my worn leather armchair, the shelves overflowing with maps and guidebooks, the photographs of past hiking trips all seemed to mock me. They belonged to a world that no longer existed, a Ben that was no longer me. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, the images flooded back. The pulsing amber symbols, the gaping black void, the impossibly slender forms of the entities, their featureless domes, their ancient, cold intent. The deluge of alien information, the visions of stars and galaxies and ancient worlds, swirled behind my eyelids, too vast, too complex, too terrifying to process. I spent the rest of the night pacing, sitting, staring into the darkness. I tried to read, to distract myself with a familiar book, but the words blurred, my mind unable to grasp their meaning. The hum in my chest was constant, a low-frequency vibration that seemed to align with my frantic heartbeat. As the pre-dawn light began to filter through my windows, painting the world in shades of gray, I knew I couldn't keep this to myself. But who? Frank. He'd laugh, then worry, then probably insist I take a long vacation and see a doctor. The police? They'd think I was crazy. A psychiatrist? They'd prescribe medication and rationalize my delusions. No, this wasn't something that could be rationalized or medicated away. This was real, and whatever had happened, whatever those beings had done, it had changed me. I pulled out my old laptop, its glowing screen a harsh contrast to the muted world. I needed answers. I started with simple keywords: unexplained silence Arizona, strange rock formations plateau, alien encounters Arizona. The search results were a predictable mix of geological surveys, tourist blogs, and crackpot conspiracy theories. None of it resonated with the profound, terrifying reality I had experienced. I spent hours poring over articles, forums, obscure scientific papers. The stone table was mentioned occasionally in geological contexts, noted for its unique erosion patterns and ancient basalt columns, but never in any way that hinted at what I had encountered. There were no local legends of silent zones or alien boxes. Nothing. It was as if the stone table's true nature was hidden, deliberately obscured from human understanding. As the sun rose higher, casting golden light through my window, I felt a strange shift. The silence, while still present, was less aggressive, less suffocating. It felt more like a filter, a new layer of perception that allowed me to hear, or rather feel, things I hadn't before. The hum of the electrical wiring in my walls, the faint vibrations from the distant traffic, the almost imperceptible growth of the plants outside my window, I felt them all not as distinct sounds, but as a subtle, interwoven tapestry of energy and resonance. The serpent symbol within me pulsed in harmony with these new sensations, a quiet, insistent thrum. The world was no longer simply quiet, it was resonant. I showered, letting the hot water sluice over my skin, trying to wash away the lingering chill and the phantom touch. As I dried off, I caught sight of myself in the mirror again. The red mark on my forehead was gone, vanished without a trace. But the phantom warmth, the subtle pressure where it had been, was undeniably there. And the serpent symbol, though unseen, continued its quiet vibration in my chest. That morning, I called Frank. My voice sounded flat, hollow, even to my own ears, despite my best efforts to sound normal. "Hey Frank, Ben here." "Ben, good you're back. How was the recon? Stone table looking good for the client?" Frank's voice, usually booming, sounded unnaturally loud through the phone, almost painful to my ears, even though the silence still filtered my perception. I had to consciously dampen my reaction. Yeah, Frank, it's interesting, definitely off the beaten path." I chose my words carefully, measuring each one. I think it might be a bit too remote for a regular client trip. Too many variables." "Variables? What's that mean, Ben? Weather, wildlife? You usually love the remote stuff." There was a note of suspicion in his voice. Frank knew me well. No, nothing like that, just a feeling. It's more isolated than I remembered, and my sat phone went dead out there, completely unresponsive, not reliable for emergencies. I seized on the one concrete, believable piece of information I had. Dead, that's impossible. I just had it serviced, never known one to fail like that. Frank sounded genuinely concerned now. You sure you checked the battery? Checked everything, it was just dead, so I think we should tell the client we need to scout another location or maybe offer them something else. It's just not safe. I hated lying to Frank, but how could I tell him the truth? There was a long pause on Frank's end. All right, Ben, you know the wilderness better than anyone. If you say it's not safe, I'll trust your gut. We'll find them another spot. Just bring that sat phone in when you come back to the shop. I want to take a look at it. Will do, Frank. I'll be in tomorrow. I hung up, a wave of weariness washing over me. The lie, however necessary, felt like a fresh betrayal, and the burden of what I knew, what I had experienced, pressed down on me with renewed force. The days that followed were a strange, dissociative blur. I tried to resume my normal routine, going to work, running errands, talking to friends, but it was like performing in a play where I'd forgotten my lines. The world felt muted, distant, veiled by an invisible curtain. The ordinary sounds of Flagstaff, traffic, conversations, music from passing cars were softened, absorbed by the persistent silence that now seemed to be an extension of my own senses. But it wasn't just a lack of sound. It was an overwhelming sense of presence, a continuous hum, a quiet resonance that flowed beneath the surface of everything. I could feel the subtle shifts in atmospheric pressure, the faint seismic vibrations of the earth, the minute electrical currents humming through power lines. It was a constant, low-level sensory input that was both exhausting and fascinating. The coiled serpent in my chest was the focal point, the receiver, the amplifier for this new perception. I started to notice things, small, almost imperceptible details that had always been there but that I'd never registered. The intricate patterns in the bark of a tree, the subtle shifts in color on a distant mountain range, the precise rhythm of a bird's wing beats as it flew overhead. It was as if my mind had been rewired, my senses sharpened, allowing me to perceive a deeper, more intricate reality. This was part of the key, I surmised, this heightened awareness. But to what purpose? My nights were haunted. Sleep offered no escape. The vivid alien dreams were a continuation of the encounter, a torrent of images and information that left me gasping and sweating in the dark. I saw the stone table again, not as a geological formation, but as a vast ancient mechanism, its rock formations not merely sculpted by wind and water, but deliberately arranged, a colossal array of stone antennae, dormant for millennia, now reawakened. I saw the box as a control panel, its symbols not just a language, but a series of commands, a way to interact with the mechanism. In these dreams, the entities returned, their obsidian forms gliding through the vastness of space, observing, cataloging, waiting. And the thought voice, that cold, ancient chorus, echoed in my mind, speaking in concepts, not words. The resonance has been acquired, the gateway is open, the tether is established. I woke each morning feeling more exhausted than when I'd gone to bed, my body aching, my mind overwhelmed. The line between dream and reality blurred, and I started to question what was real and what was merely a fragment of my traumatized mind. I avoided the stone table, putting as much physical distance between myself and that place as possible. But the stone table was in me now. It had left its mark, its resonance, its key. I tried to research the symbol, the coiled serpent, but found nothing concrete. It wasn't a universal occult symbol, not a known ancient glyph. It was unique, alien, deeply personal to my experience. My colleagues at the outfitter shop noticed my change. I was quieter, more withdrawn. My usually easygoing nature was replaced by a tense watchfulness. "You look like you've seen a ghost, Ben," one of them joked, clapping me on the shoulder. I forced a weak smile, if only it had been a ghost. Frank, bless his pragmatic soul, examined my sat phone thoroughly. He replaced the battery, checked the circuits, ran diagnostics. It remained stubbornly, utterly dead. "Never seen anything like it, Ben," he admitted, shaking his head. "Looks like it was hit by an EMP or just fried. Good thing you didn't rely on it." He handed me a new one, a newer model. "This one's got two-way texting, too." Extra safety. The new phone felt impossibly heavy in my hand, a useless piece of technology against whatever had silenced the first. I nodded, grateful for his trust, for his belief in my inexplicable story about the phone's failure. It reinforced my decision to keep the rest of it to myself. I was alone in this. The more I tried to suppress the memories, the more intensely they pressed in. The constant low hum of the serpent symbol in my chest became a subtle ache, a gnawing emptiness, a sense of incompleteness. It was as if a part of me was missing, yearning for something, for some purpose that had been hinted at but not revealed. The knowledge that the entities had implanted something within me, a key, became an obsession. What did it unlock? What was I supposed to do with it? One night, almost a week after the encounter, I was restless as usual. I was sitting in my living room, staring out into the star-dusted Flagstaff night, the new enhanced silence draped around me like a shroud. I picked up an old geological survey map of northern Arizona, one of the many I kept for work. My finger traced the familiar lines of canyons and plateaus, instinctively gravitating towards the unmarked spot where the stone table lay. As my finger brushed against the designated area, a sudden, sharp jolt went through me. It wasn't pain, but an intense electrical current, a rush of energy that surged from my fingertips through my arm and into my chest, making the serpent symbol flare with an almost painful intensity. My breath hitched. The map, which had been a flat, two-dimensional representation of terrain, suddenly seemed to come alive beneath my touch. I saw it not with my eyes, but with this new, awakened sense. I saw energy lines, subtle currents flowing beneath the Earth's surface, converging, crisscrossing, creating a vast, intricate network. And the stone table, that remote, unnamed plateau, was a nexus, a powerful node in this unseen web. My vision seemed to shift, overlaying the physical map with a complex pattern of shimmering, pulsating light, reminiscent of the symbols on the metal box. These were not geological features, they were something else entirely, a hidden architecture, a subtle energy grid, and I could feel it. I could feel the flow, the currents, the intricate connections. The coiled serpent in my chest hummed in delighted recognition, its resonance aligning with this newly perceived energy. My hand moved instinctively, tracing new lines, new patterns across the map, independent of my conscious will. It was as if the map itself was guiding me, or rather, the symbol within me was interpreting the map. I saw other points of convergence, other nodes in this hidden network, scattered across the vast, wild landscapes of Arizona and beyond. Each point pulsed with a faint, internal light, mirroring the amber glow of the alien box. A terrible, exhilarating understanding began to dawn on me. The stone table was not just a portal, not just a beacon. It was a hub, one of many, and the entities, they weren't just waiting at it. They were using it. They were everywhere. The silence that surrounded me now felt less like a prison and more like a window, a gateway to a reality I had been blind to. The muting of external sound wasn't a defect. It was a necessary filter, allowing me to perceive the world in its true, resonant form. My heart pounded, not with fear this time, but with a terrifying sense of revelation. The key was indeed within me. It wasn't just a symbol, it was a sensitivity, an ability to perceive and perhaps interact with this hidden energy network. The entities hadn't just changed me, they had activated me. I stared at the map, now a vibrant, pulsating tapestry of hidden energies. One specific node far to the northwest, deep in the desolate, untamed wilderness of the Grand Canyon's north rim, seemed to glow brighter than the others. It was an area I knew well, a place of profound solitude, rarely visited by anyone. It was even more remote than the stone table, and the thought voice, the chorus of ancient presences, resonated in my mind, cold and clear. The next resonance point, the gateway awaits. My breath hitched, they were guiding me. They had planted the key, and now they were pointing the way. My mind reeled. The terror was still there, but it was now laced with an undeniable, consuming curiosity. I was no longer a victim. I was being drawn into something vast, ancient, and utterly beyond my wildest dreams. The choice was clear, even though it was no choice at all. I couldn't ignore this. I couldn't go back to my old life. The silence, the symbol, the new perceptions, they wouldn't let me. I was irrevocably bound to this unfolding mystery. I needed to go to the North Rim. I needed to understand what was happening to me, what this gateway was, what these entities truly wanted. The fear was immense, a cold claw gripping my heart, but the pull, the cosmic gravity of the unknown was stronger. I had stepped off the trail, and now there was no turning back. This was my new path, terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. My journey had only just begun. I stared at the map, now a vibrant, pulsating tapestry of hidden energies. One specific node far to the northwest, deep in the desolate, untamed wilderness of the Grand Canyon's north rim, seemed to glow brighter than the others. It was an area I knew well, a place of profound solitude, rarely visited by anyone. It was even more remote than the stone table, and the thought voice, the chorus of ancient presences, resonated in my mind, cold and clear. The next resonance point, the gateway awaits. My breath hitched, they were guiding me. They had planted the key, and now they were pointing the way. My mind reeled. The terror was still there, but it was now laced with an undeniable, consuming curiosity. I was no longer a victim. I was being drawn into something vast, ancient, and utterly beyond my wildest dreams. The choice was clear, even though it was no choice at all. I couldn't ignore this. I couldn't go back to my old life. The silence, the symbol, the new perceptions, they wouldn't let me. I was irrevocably bound to this unfolding mystery. I needed to go to the North Rim. I needed to understand what was happening to me, what this gateway was, what these entities truly wanted. The fear was immense, a cold claw gripping my heart, but the pull, the cosmic gravity of the unknown was stronger. I had stepped off the trail, and now there was no turning back. This was my new path, terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. My journey had only just begun. The decision made, a strange calm settled over me, a chilling resolve that pushed back against the swirling chaos in my mind. The humming of the serpent symbol in my chest intensified, not painfully, but with a vibrant sense of anticipation. It felt as if a switch had been flipped, a hidden mechanism brought to life. My old life, the comforting routine of a wilderness guide, now seemed a distant, irrelevant dream. This was my new reality, a journey into the heart of the unknown, guided by an alien compass lodged within my very being. I knew the North Rim wilderness intimately, its unforgiving terrain, its sudden, brutal weather shifts. This wasn't a casual day trip. This was an expedition, potentially into the very fabric of reality. I needed to prepare not just for the elements, but for the impossible. The next few days were a blur of intense, focused activity. I started by making another call to Frank. Hey Frank, about that new sat phone you gave me. I was thinking of doing a solo recon trip up to the North Rim, exploring some new backcountry routes for future clients. Good chance to test the new gear, you know. It wasn't entirely a lie. I was going to the North Rim. I was testing gear, albeit in a way Frank could never fathom. Frank grunted, North Rim, that's serious country, Ben. You sure about this? It's getting late in the season. I know, but that's why it's perfect. No tourists, just raw wilderness. Good test for the new model. I'll stick to established trails mostly, just venturing off for a few hours here and there to map new possibilities. And I'll check in daily, promise. The lies came easier this time, coded in the familiar language of my profession. All right, Ben, you're the best. Just be careful and don't lose this sat phone. His voice held a hint of amusement, but I detected a subtle undercurrent of concern. Frank trusted me, and that trust felt like another betrayal, a heavy weight on my already burdened conscience. With Frank appeased, I plunged into preparing my gear. My usual meticulousness was amplified by the stakes of this trip. Every item was scrutinized, every piece of equipment tested. I packed for an extended stay, far longer than I told Frank. Extra food, water purification tablets, a more robust first aid kit, cold weather sleeping gear, emergency flares, redundant navigation tools. My new sat phone, fully charged, was tucked into a waterproof pouch, though I held no real faith in its efficacy against them. As I sorted through my equipment, my new perceptions continued to develop, deepening and refining. The world outside, already muted by the silence, seemed to reveal new layers of information. I could feel the minute vibrations of the house, the electrical currents flowing through the walls, the subtle hum of distant machinery. It was like living with a constant, low-frequency white noise, a new baseline of existence. The coiled serpent symbol in my chest was the receiver, constantly sifting through this influx of data, pointing out patterns, connections, energies that had always been invisible to me. I noticed, too, that the silence wasn't just around me, it was within me. My own thoughts, usually a noisy jumble, were clearer, sharper, almost telepathic in their internal articulation. It was as if the constant external noise had been a distraction, and now, with it stripped away, my mind had achieved a new level of focus. This was both a blessing and a curse. It allowed me to plan with startling efficiency, but it also meant there was no escape from the relentless replay of the stone table encounter, no mental corner where the obsidian entities couldn't reach. I spent hours poring over geological survey maps of the North Rim, the same maps that had revealed the hidden energy lines. Now, armed with my enhanced perception, I could see them more clearly, feel their currents. The North Rim node glowed brightest, a nexus of pulsating energy, a vibrant heart in the vast, wild expanse. But I also saw fainter lines, subtle trails of energy extending outwards, connecting to other, less prominent points like veins radiating from a central organ. This wasn't just a series of isolated spots, it was a global grid, an ancient cosmic network. The destination was a specific, unmarked canyon, a deep, narrow slit in the earth that even seasoned guides rarely ventured into. It was known for its treacherous descents and labyrinthine passages, a place of true isolation. Now on my map it pulsed with that amber light, a silent invitation. The night before I left, I couldn't sleep. The hum in my chest was too insistent, the visions too vivid. I sat by my window, watching the stars, feeling the subtle pulse of the earth beneath me. The silence of Flagstaff was now a familiar companion, a filter through which I perceived the world. I felt a profound sense of loneliness, knowing I was embarking on a journey no one else could understand, no one else could share. But there was also a burgeoning sense of purpose, a terrifying conviction that this was what I was meant to do, what I had been chosen for. The next morning, under a sky still bruised with pre-dawn purple, I loaded my Tacoma. Every movement was precise, economical. The familiar weight of my pack, the clink of carabiners, the solid thud of the truck door all registered with a new, unsettling clarity, their sounds muted but their vibrations exquisitely felt. I took one last look at my small house, a monument to a life I was leaving behind, and drove off. The drive north out of Flagstaff was a strange blend of familiarity and alienness. The interstate, usually a roaring river of traffic, felt like a silent procession of ghosts. I could feel the energy of the vehicles around me, the heat radiating from their engines, the subtle vibrations of their tires on the asphalt, but the actual sound was dampened, distant. It was like watching a film with the volume turned down low, experiencing the world through a veil. The serpent cymbal hummed a constant, low thrum, reacting to the passing energy fields, aligning itself with the deep currents of the earth. As I drove further, the landscape slowly transformed. The ponderosa forests gave way to rolling sagebrush plains, then to the vast, open expanse of the Navajo Nation. The sky seemed to stretch endlessly, a canvas of deepening blue. Here, away from the immediate hum of civilization, the silence intensified. It wasn't the absolute vacuum of the stone table, but it was a profound, watchful quiet that settled deep into my bones. I focused on the map, letting the internal resonance guide me. The energy lines I perceived weren't just theoretical. They were palpable, subtle currents flowing beneath the asphalt, through the scrubland, across the distant mesas. My hands on the steering wheel felt them, my chest vibrated with them. It was like driving over a giant, invisible circuit board, each turn, each rise, a conduit of unseen power. The closer I got to the Grand Canyon, the stronger the subtle pull became, a magnetic draw that sharpened my focus, sharpened my fear. The pavement eventually gave way to graded dirt roads, then to increasingly rough, unmaintained tracks. My Tacoma, a veteran of countless backcountry adventures, rattled and groaned, but its sounds too were muted, swallowed by the pervasive silence. I saw deer, elk, and wild horses, their movements graceful and silent, their forms almost shimmering in my enhanced perception, as if I could see the very life force radiating from them. They seemed to perceive me, too, their heads snapping up, eyes wide, before they vanished into the brush. Was it just a heightened awareness, or was I radiating something, too? After hours of driving, the landscape began to buckle and crack, hinting at the monumental chasm ahead. The air grew thinner, crisper, carrying the scent of pine and ancient rock. I was nearing the Grand Canyon's north rim, a place of awe-inspiring beauty and profound, humbling scale. My internal compass, the serpent symbol, pulsed with an almost urgent throb. I parked the truck in a small, concealed hollow miles from the nearest established trailhead, a place I knew only from detailed topo maps and years of local knowledge. The silence here was immense, a heavy, pressing presence that vibrated through the very ground. This wasn't just the absence of sound, it was an entity, a guardian. I killed the engine, and the world plunged into an even deeper, more profound stillness. I stepped out, taking a deep, shaky breath. The air, cold and pure, filled my lungs, but it felt thin, charged. The sun was high, a brilliant disk in a sky of impossible blue, yet the light seemed muted, absorbed by the vastness. Around me, the ancient ponderosa pines stood like silent sentinels, their needles motionless. Even the faint breeze that usually whispered through the branches was absent. My gaze swept the horizon. To my left, the endless, sprawling wilderness of the Kaibab Plateau. To my right, the colossal, silent maw of the Grand Canyon, a timeless wound in the earth. And straight ahead, the subtle, almost imperceptible dip in the terrain that marked the entrance to the unnamed canyon. It didn't look special, just another crack in the vast landscape. but to my awakened senses it pulsed with a faint amber light, a beacon in the silent wilderness. I shouldered my pack, checking the straps, feeling the familiar weight. My hands, despite the cold, were clammy. This was it, the next step into the impossible. The journey from the stone table had been about understanding what had happened to me. This journey was about understanding what I was now part of. The initial descent into the canyon was steep and treacherous, a winding, narrow goat trail that demanded every ounce of my guide experience. Loose scree, sudden drop-offs, and thorny scrub conspired to make the path perilous, but my new perceptions, far from being a distraction, seemed to enhance my abilities. I could feel the subtle shifts in the rock, the most stable foot placement, the faintest vibrations warning of loose ground. My movements were more precise, more instinctive. The silence was an ally here, sharpening my focus, stripping away all distraction. As I descended deeper, the canyon walls began to close in, towering hundreds of feet above me, blocking out the direct sun. The air grew perceptibly colder, and the silence deepened, becoming a physical presence, a heavy cloak that wrapped around me. The light, filtered through the narrow opening above, took on a muted, ethereal quality, painting the ancient rock in shades of ochre and deep shadow. The serpent symbol in my chest thrummed with increasing intensity, almost painfully now, guiding me through the labyrinthine passages. I felt the energy lines converging, braiding together, becoming denser, more powerful. This was clearly the nexus, the heart of this specific node. I passed through a narrow slot canyon, its walls smooth and sculpted by millennia of flash floods, until it opened into a wider chamber. And there, in the center of the chamber, was another metal box. It was identical to the one on the stone table. Roughly the size of a small cooler, sleek, seamless, its surface a dull, non-reflective gray, almost black. It sat there, utterly out of place, an alien anomaly in the ancient, natural world. But this time, it wasn't inert. It pulsed with a faint, internal amber light, the same soft glow I'd seen before, and the familiar, geometric, yet organic symbols were already shimmering into existence on its surface, a chaotic dance of alien glyphs. The cold emanating from it was immediate and intense, a localized chill that made my breath cloud in the still air. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum solo against the profound silence. This was no dream, no hallucination. This was terrifyingly, undeniably real, and I was exactly where they wanted me to be. The thought voice, that cold, ancient chorus, filled my mind, precise and clear. You have arrived, Ben. The tether strengthens. My knees trembled, but I didn't collapse this time. Fear was a familiar companion now, a low hum beneath a burgeoning sense of awe and a strange, compelling fascination. I had sought answers, and here they were, waiting for me. As I approached the box, the amber light intensified and the symbols pulsed faster. One symbol, different from the coiled serpent, yet equally complex and intricate, began to expand, separating itself from the others. It resembled a series of interlocking rings, a cosmic gyroscope constantly shifting and rotating. As it grew, the seamless metal surface of the box rippled, softened, and flowed away, revealing the familiar void of absolute, impenetrable blackness. The pull, that subtle magnetic draw, was stronger this time, tugging at my clothes, at my hair, at my very essence. It wasn't gentle anymore, it was an insistent force, urging me closer into the black abyss. I felt a cold dread, but also a strange sense of inevitability. I had come this far, there was no turning back. From the burgeoning darkness, something began to emerge. It was impossibly slow, like a dream unfolding in molasses, a faint shimmer, a distortion in the absolute black. Then a shape began to materialize, not stepping out but coalescing from the void. It was slender, elongated, its dark, obsidian surface absorbing all light. It was one of them, identical to the first one I'd encountered. Tall, impossibly so, perhaps 7 or 8 feet in height, but slender, almost skeletal. Its limbs were long, ending in delicate, multi-jointed digits that looked like intricate roots. Its body was smooth, chitinous, segmented, its featureless dome forming the top of its elongated torso. No eyes, no mouth, no discernible sensory organs, yet I felt an intense, undeniable sensation of being observed, analyzed. The entity stepped fully out of the black void onto the dusty canyon floor. It made no sound. Its movement was fluid, graceful, almost ethereal. It turned its featureless dome towards me, and in that moment I felt the familiar surge of cosmic dread, the terror of facing something utterly beyond human experience. It raised one of its impossibly long, multi-jointed limbs. The hand at the end, a delicate, root-like structure, extended towards me. Again, it wasn't menacing, but an invitation, a slow, deliberate beckoning. And from the black void behind it, another shape began to coalesce, then another, a terrifying procession of these impossible beings. This time there were more of them, many more. The thought voice returned, stronger, clearer, now a chorus of countless ancient presences pulsing within my skull. You are ready, Ben. The activation proceeds. I gasped, a raw, ragged sound as if I was surfacing from an endless ocean. My body trembled uncontrollably, a fine tremor that shook me from head to toe. This was too much. Yet a part of me, the part awakened by the serpent symbol, was oddly calm, receptive. The first entity was right in front of me now, its root-like hand just inches from my face. I could feel its presence, a hum of immense, incomprehensible energy. I stared into its featureless dome, searching still for something, anything, a hint of recognition and emotion. There was nothing. Only that vast, ancient intent. Its hand reached out, brushing against my forehead, right between my eyes, exactly as before. It wasn't a touch, but a permeation, a subtle push. A surge of energy, cold and electric, coursed through my body, far more intense than the first time. My vision exploded into a kaleidoscope of colors and forms, brighter, faster, more complex, almost overwhelming. I felt that tearing sensation again, something within me being pulled, stretched, rewired, but this time it wasn't agony. It was an initiation. My muscles convulsed, my breath hitched, then choked. My body arched, a silent scream trapped in my throat, lost in the overwhelming silence. I felt a connection forming, a link between my mind and this impossible being, between my small human consciousness and an ancient cosmic intelligence. But this time the link was deeper, more profound, less invasive, more symbiotic. The images, the concepts, the alien wisdom flooded my mind, a torrent of incomprehensible data, but I was processing it faster, understanding more, not with my conscious mind, but with that new, awakened part of me. I saw stars and galaxies, ancient civilizations, the immense passage of time. And then a new set of images, clearer, more urgent. I saw the Earth not as a planet, but as a living organism, a vital node in the cosmic network. I saw patterns of energy flowing through its core, emanating from its surface, reaching out into space. And I saw something else, something threatening. A distortion in the cosmic tapestry, an encroaching darkness, a growing imbalance that threatened the very fabric of existence. And then a singular image, sharp and precise, burned itself into my consciousness. It was the coiled serpent symbol, but now it was animated, alive, a living key, twisting and turning, its tail extending, connecting, joining with other symbols, other patterns, forming a complex circuit. It wasn't just a symbol of activation, it was a tool, a mechanism. The thought voice returned, now a single, unified presence, vast and ancient. The balance is threatened. The conduits must be awakened. You are the chosen resonance. You are the new tether. The entity's hand remained on my forehead, the cold electrical current surging through me. I felt my consciousness expanding, encompassing not just the canyon, but the entire planet, the solar system, the distant galaxies. I saw the energy lines on the map not as abstract concepts, but as pulsating rivers of light flowing through the very crust of the earth. I saw the stone table and this North Rim Canyon as vital points, immense generators or receivers in this cosmic grid. My mind, for the first time, truly understood. These beings weren't malevolent, they weren't conquerors, they were guardians, and they were activating me to be a part of their ancient vigil. The key was not just to unlock the box, it was to unlock me, to turn me into a conduit, a living instrument capable of interacting with this hidden reality, with this network of energy. The process was still excruciatingly intense, a complete restructuring of my perception, my very being. I felt old limitations dissolving, new pathways opening. The silence around me, which had been a filter, now became a language, a direct input of cosmic information. Then, with a gentle yet firm release, the connection snapped. The light receded, the images vanished, the cold eased, and the entities seemed to blur at the edges, less solid, less real. I gasped, a raw, ragged sound, as if I was surfacing from an endless ocean. My body collapsed back onto the dusty canyon floor, every muscle screaming in protest, but this time it was different. There was no terror, only a profound sense of exhaustion and a terrifying, exhilarating clarity. I lay there, chest heaving, vision swimming, trying to piece together what had just happened. My head throbbed, a dull, insistent ache, but it was a familiar ache now, a sign of the profound changes that had just occurred. The silence was still there, but it felt welcoming, a new friend. When I finally managed to push myself up on shaky arms, rubbing the lingering warmth from my forehead, I saw that the entities were gone, vanished. The black void that had served as their gateway was rapidly shrinking, the seamless metal surface of the box flowing back together, slowly swallowing the absolute darkness. The amber symbols, too, were fading, retracting back into the metal, leaving behind that perfectly smooth, dull gray surface. Within moments, the box was closed, seamless and inert, as if it had never opened, as if the entire terrifying encounter had been nothing but a hallucination. Only the lingering, raw ache in my skull and the intense hum in my chest told me it had been terrifyingly, overwhelmingly real. I scrambled backward, away from the box, but not in panic this time. It was an instinct, a need for space to process, to integrate. I didn't stop until my back hit the base of the canyon wall, gasping for breath, my mind reeling. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to regain control, to make sense of the incomprehensible, to understand the purpose of this activation. I opened my eyes. The silence was still there, but it seemed to hold a new quality, a deeper meaning. It wasn't just an absence of sound anymore, it was a presence, a watchful, patient observer, and now a silent communicator. And then I felt it, not in my ears, not in my mind, but deep in my chest, a powerful vibration. The symbol, the coiled serpent. It wasn't just a dormant seed anymore, it was alive, vibrant, pulsating with immense, controlled energy. It was the key, yes, but it was also the lock, the tether, the conduit. My hand instinctively went to my chest, over my heart, as if I could feel the symbol pulsating beneath my skin. And then, it wasn't just a feeling. It was a perception. I could see it in my mind's eye, glowing with an internal amber light, a complex, interconnected circuit, now fully powered, fully alive. I stood there in the heart of the silent canyon, no longer just Ben, a guide from Flagstaff. I was Ben, a new resonance, a tether, a conduit. I had been activated. The Grand Canyon, the stone table, the vast wilderness, it was all part of a larger mechanism, an ancient cosmic defense system, and I was now a part of it. The feeling of overwhelming responsibility settled upon me, a weight as vast and ancient as the universe itself. The balance was threatened. The conduits must be awakened. I was one of them. What did that mean? What was I supposed to do? My mind, still reeling from the torrent of alien information, began to sift through the data, guided by the serpent symbol's insistent hum. The images of Earth as a living organism, of energy lines flowing beneath its surface, coalesced into a terrifying map of urgency. The darkness I had perceived in the alien visions wasn't a metaphor. It was real, and it was approaching. I looked down at my hands, ordinary hands scarred from years of climbing and guiding. Now they felt different. They felt like tools, instruments. I extended one finger hesitantly towards the dusty canyon floor, and as I did, I felt a faint vibration, an echo from the very bedrock, a response. It was subtle but undeniable. I was not just perceiving the energy, I was interacting with it. The serpent symbol flared in my chest, a surge of warmth and power. This was a profound, terrifying new reality. I was no longer a passive observer. I was an active participant in something far grander, far more dangerous than I could have ever imagined. The solitude of the canyon, usually a comfort, now felt like a training ground, a proving ground. The entities had used me, awakened me, activated me, but for what ultimate purpose? They had spoken of the balance, of conduits, of a tether. I was a tether, connecting my human world to their ancient cosmic one. But to what end? To fight, to protect, to simply exist as a sensor in their vast, silent network. I looked at the inert metal box, then at the vast, silent expanse of the canyon, which seemed to stretch endlessly into the twilight. The sun was dipping below the canyon rim, casting long, purple shadows that swallowed the chamber in gloom. The light from the box, though now faded, seemed to leave a faint, residual glow in the air, a ghost of its recent activation. My legs, stiff and trembling, finally cooperated. I pushed myself up, slowly, painfully. I didn't dare look back at the innocuous-looking metal box for long. My only thought now was survival and understanding. I had to get out of this canyon, back to my truck, and then what? The path ahead was shrouded in deepening shadows, but I could feel it now, not just see it. The energy lines of the earth pulsed beneath my feet, guiding me, showing me the way out. The ascent was difficult, but I moved with a new agility, a heightened awareness that allowed me to navigate the treacherous terrain even in the encroaching darkness. Every handhold, every foot placement seemed to reveal itself to me, illuminated by an internal, resonant light. I knew with a chilling certainty that whatever had happened here, it wasn't over. It had only just begun. The stone table was the trigger, the north rim was the activation. What came next? The thought voice had spoken of the conduits must be awakened. That implied there were others, other places, other people, or perhaps other me's. As I finally reached the rim of the canyon, the last sliver of sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery streaks of orange and crimson. The wilderness stretched out before me, vast and silent, now imbued with a new, profound meaning. I was not just a guide walking through nature. I was a resonant frequency, a part of its hidden pulse, connected to something ancient and immense. My truck was a welcome sight, a familiar anchor in my rapidly shifting reality. I climbed in, starting the engine, its roar now a welcome, grounding presence, though still muted by my new senses. I drove away from the North Rim, leaving the activated gateway behind, but I knew I was taking a piece of it with me. The coiled serpent symbol pulsed in my chest, a constant, undeniable reminder of my transformation. I was no longer just Ben, I was a key, a tether, a conduit, and the universe in its vast, silent indifference had just assigned me a mission. I didn't know what it entailed or what dangers lay ahead, but I knew with a terrifying certainty that I couldn't run from it. The journey back to Flagstaff was a silent reckoning, a processing of the impossible. I had stepped into a world beyond human comprehension, and it was now my world. My path was laid out before me, stretching into an unknown future, guided by the hum of an alien symbol and the silent whispers of ancient entities. I was ready, or at least I had to be. My journey truly had only just begun, and it led deeper into the mysteries of Earth's hidden resonant grid. The drive back to Flagstaff was a test of endurance, both physical and mental. My body ached, a deep, bone-weary exhaustion settling in, but my mind was alight, processing the deluge of information. The external world, filtered by my enhanced silence, was a constant stream of resonant data. The subtle vibrations of the road, the low thrum of distant power lines, the electromagnetic fields radiating from passing towns, all registered as clear, distinct patterns within my consciousness. The serpent symbol in my chest pulsed, acting as a translator, an internal compass orienting me within this newly perceived energetic landscape. I bypassed Flagstaff, unable to face the normalcy of my home, the questions from Frank, or the mundane tasks of my old life. My new reality demanded solitude, a space to integrate, to understand. Instead, I drove east, towards the vast, open plains that stretched into the painted desert, a place of stark, ancient beauty, a landscape that always seemed to whisper secrets. I needed to be where the land was old and raw, where the echoes of ancient power felt less incongruous with my own rapidly evolving state. I found a remote spot, miles off any paved road, nestled among a cluster of wind-sculpted sandstone formations. The land here was a tapestry of reds, oranges, and purples, a silent symphony of color under the vast, indifferent sky. As I killed the engine of my Tacoma, the silence that descended was immense, profound, yet strangely comforting. It was my silence now, a part of me, a lens through which I viewed the universe. I spent the next few days in a state of intense introspection, camped beneath the endless sweep of the stars. Sleep, when it came, was still a torrent of alien dreams, but they were less terrifying now, more instructive. I saw the Earth's energy grid with increasing clarity, a vast, intricate web of power lines, invisible to the uninitiated, connecting sacred sites, ancient geological anomalies, and hidden portals. The Stone Table and the North Rim Canyon were just two nodes in a much larger global network. The thought voice, a cold, ancient chorus, continued to guide me, not with specific instructions, but with conceptual fragments, images, and intuitive pushes. The network extends, the conduits are many, the threat awakens. The message was clear if vague. There were other nodes, other conduits, other activated individuals like me, and a threat was stirring. I wasn't just a sensor, I was a piece of a larger puzzle, a member of an unseen defense system. The loneliness I had felt began to dissipate, replaced by a strange sense of belonging, a terrifying camaraderie with unknown allies across the globe. My interaction with the energy of the land intensified. I discovered I could not only perceive it, but subtly influence it. By focusing my intent, guided by the humming serpent, I could feel minute shifts in the flow, a faint response from the earth itself. It was like learning a new language, a silent dialogue with the planet. I would sit for hours, my hand pressed against the sandstone, feeling the deep pulse of the earth, tracing the unseen currents, learning to manipulate the subtle energy fields. It was an exhausting, exhilarating process. I also began to practice extending my perception beyond my immediate surroundings. Closing my eyes, I could feel the faint, distant hum of other nodes, other gateways, their unique resonant frequencies calling out across the vastness. One in particular, far to the west, deep in the desolate expanse of the Mojave Desert, pulsed with an insistent, almost urgent rhythm. It was a new point, a place I hadn't seen on my map during my initial discovery, a place that seemed to have activated only recently, or perhaps become urgent. The entities were still guiding me, not with words, but with direct, internal resonance. This new node felt different from the others. The stone table had been ancient, dormant, the north rim a powerful, established nexus. But this new point felt raw, fresh, like a wound opening. It throbbed with a volatile, unfamiliar energy, a resonance that was almost discordant, unsettling. It wasn't the steady, ancient hum of the Earth's natural energy grid. It felt external, an intrusion. The thought voice confirmed my apprehension. New gateway, unstable, interference. Interference, the word resonated with a chilling clarity. This was not a natural activation. This was something else. A new threat, perhaps, or a new challenge to the balance. My newfound sense of purpose hardened into grim determination. I broke camp with a renewed sense of urgency. The desolate beauty of the painted desert, usually a source of peace, now felt like a temporary refuge, a pause before the next storm. I needed to move, to follow the insistent pull of the Mojave node. The drive was long, westward across Arizona, then into California. The landscape slowly shifted from the vibrant hues of the desert to the stark, sun-baked expanse of the Mojave. The silence was my constant companion, filtering the world, making the journey feel like a solitary passage through a dream. I ate, drank, and drove, my focus absolute, my senses alert to every subtle shift in the energy lines that crisscrossed the land. As I neared the projected location, deep within a vast, uninhabited stretch of the Mojave, the air itself seemed to change. It grew heavy, almost oppressive, not with the familiar stillness of my enhanced silence, but with a palpable tension, a sense of unseen forces at play. The hum of the serpent symbol in my chest became a rapid pulse, urgent and warning. The discordant energy from the new node was no longer a faint hum. It was a throbbing ache in my skull, a jarring frequency that made my teeth ache. The landscape was one of stark, jagged mountains and endless, flat plains littered with sharp, volcanic rock. Yucca plants and creosote bushes, gnarled and ancient, dotted the desolate terrain. The sky was an unforgiving, pale blue, the sun a harsh, blinding disk. There was no shade, no water, only rock and dust and an immense, suffocating heat. My hands tightened on the steering wheel, knuckles white. The discomfort was more than just physical. It was a psychic assault, a dissonant chord struck against the newly attuned symphony of my senses. The serpent symbol in my chest throbbed erratically, its amber glow in my mind's eye flickering like a failing lamp. This wasn't the cold, ancient intent of the obsidian entities, nor the profound, watchful silence of the Earth's natural nodes. This was something aggressive, almost chaotic, a raw, untamed power that felt wrong. The thought voice, usually a chorus of ancient presences, was fragmented, a jumble of competing whispers, barely audible beneath the growing cacophony of the discordant energy. Contain, breach, distortion, eliminate. The words, or rather concepts, were jarring, urgent, and lacked the usual cold precision. Something was very wrong here. I drove deeper into the desolate heart of the Mojave, following the insistent, though now painful, pull. The dirt tracks I navigated were barely discernible, spiderwebbing across an endless flat. The sun, relentlessly beating down, warped the distant horizon into shimmering mirages. Every rock, every bush seemed to shimmer with an unnatural intensity, vibrating with that grating frequency. My head pounded, a constant, dull throb behind my eyes. I felt a growing nausea, a deep unease that settled in my stomach. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of driving through a landscape that seemed to actively repel life, the resonant pull directed me towards a cluster of low, jagged hills. They were dark, almost black, made of volcanic rock that looked sharp enough to flay skin. At their base, a narrow, shadowed canyon mouth, almost indistinguishable from the surrounding rock, beckoned. This was it, the new node. As I killed the engine, the silence that followed wasn't my familiar, comforting filter. It was a suffocating blanket, thick with the discordant energy. The world outside the truck seemed to pulse with a low, aggressive hum, a frequency that grated on my very soul. My sat phone, which I had kept on despite my distrust, let out a sudden, high-pitched whine, then died. Its screen went black, just like the first one. Another piece of technology fried. But this time I wasn't surprised. I expected it. I stepped out of the truck, the heat hitting me like a physical blow. The air shimmered, not just from the sun, but from the unseen energy that saturated it. Every breath felt heavy, metallic. The landscape around me was devoid of color, bleached bone white and ash black, a stark contrast to the vibrant energies I now perceived. The serpent symbol in my chest pulsed, frantic, sending shivers through my body. The canyon entrance was a dark slit in the volcanic rock, a jagged wound in the earth. It seemed to actively draw in the light, creating a zone of unnatural gloom even under the harsh desert sun. There was no gentle invitation here, no ancient, watchful presence. Only an aggressive, almost hostile energy that vibrated in my bones. I grabbed my pack, checking my gear with hands that trembled despite my efforts to control them. Water, first aid, a flashlight, my new and now likely useless sat phone, and a hunting knife, a primitive defense against a cosmic threat. It felt absurd, but the instinct for self-preservation was primal. As I approached the canyon mouth, the discordant energy intensified, buzzing in my ears, making my teeth ache. It felt like walking into a powerful electromagnetic field, but one that resonated with fear and chaos. The thought voice was a cacophony now, a desperate, jumbled chorus. Warning, unstable, danger, contain. Taking a deep breath, I pushed through the invisible barrier and stepped into the gloom of the canyon. The change was immediate and profound. The heat dissipated, replaced by a sudden, unnatural chill, far colder than the desert sun would suggest. The air was utterly still, heavy with the scent of ozone and something else, something metallic and acrid. The canyon floor was a jagged, uneven path, littered with sharp, broken shards of volcanic rock. The walls, slick and dark, rose steeply, blocking out the sky. There was no natural light, only a faint, eerie luminescence that seemed to emanate from the very air itself, casting long, distorted shadows that danced with phantom movements. It was like walking into another dimension, a place where the laws of physics bent and warped. My enhanced senses were overwhelmed. The energy lines I usually perceived as flowing currents were here a tangled, chaotic mess like frayed wires spitting sparks. The serpent symbol within me was writhing, a frantic, desperate pulse, trying to interpret the storm of information, struggling to maintain its focus. I moved deeper, each step echoing unnaturally in the profound silence. The cold intensified, biting at my exposed skin, and then I saw it. It wasn't a seamless, dark gray box. It was a jagged, raw tear in reality itself. In the center of a wider chamber, where the canyon opened up slightly, was a shimmering, pulsating portal. It was roughly elliptical, about 10 feet tall and 5 feet wide, a swirling vortex of deep purple and sickly green light. It crackled with visible electrical energy, spitting sparks that vanished before they hit the ground. From its edges, tendrils of black, smoke-like energy writhed and snaked, dissipating into the unnatural gloom of the canyon. And around it, scattered haphazardly on the ground, were pieces of what looked like the familiar alien box. Shattered fragments of its seamless, dark gray material lay strewn about, some glowing faintly with residual amber light, others still pulsing with the discordant purple-green energy of the portal. It looked like the box had been ripped apart violently from the inside out. My breath hitched, a cold knot forming in my stomach. This was the interference. This wasn't a natural gateway. This was a forced breach, a violent intrusion. Then I saw them. They weren't the obsidian entities, not directly at least. Emerging from the swirling purple-green portal, struggling to pull themselves through the tearing fabric of reality, were creatures unlike anything I had ever seen, even in my most terrifying dreams. They were vaguely humanoid, but distorted, twisted. Their forms were shifting, indistinct, like reflections in oily water. They seemed to be made of shadows and smoke, their bodies a swirling mass of dark, indistinct tendrils and pseudopods. They writhed and contorted, their limbs elongating and retracting with disturbing fluidity. They were smaller than the obsidian entities, perhaps 6 feet tall at their most extended, but they radiated a palpable sense of hunger, of malicious intent. Their heads were amorphous, shifting masses, but I could perceive rudimentary, glowing red points that seemed to serve as eyes, burning with malevolent intelligence. They made no sound, but the air around them seemed to vibrate with a low, guttural growl that was felt rather than heard, a sound that resonated with the discordant energy of the portal. 2 of them had already pulled themselves fully out of the portal, their shadowy forms coalescing into a more defined, though still fluid, shape. They turned their glowing red eyes towards me, and a wave of pure, undiluted fear washed over me, a primitive animal terror that went beyond the cosmic dread of the obsidian beings. These creatures were not ancient, cold, and observant. They were predatory. The thought voice in my mind, fragmented and desperate, sharpened momentarily. Intruders, dimensional breach, contain, eliminate. Suddenly, the serpent symbol in my chest flared, not with the gentle, guiding hum I had grown accustomed to, but with a surge of raw, defensive energy. It felt like a jolt of pure adrenaline, a sudden burst of power that coursed through my limbs, sharpening my senses beyond anything I'd experienced. The discordant energy of the canyon, while still grating, was now being filtered, processed by the serpent, allowing me to perceive its structure, its weaknesses. The 2 shadow creatures advanced, their movements jerky, almost predatory. The ground beneath them seemed to sizzle, leaving faint scorch marks on the volcanic rock. The air grew colder, heavier. I stumbled backward, my hand instinctively reaching for the hunting knife on my belt. It felt hopelessly inadequate, a child's toy against these manifestations of pure darkness. But the surge of energy from the serpent symbol also brought a new clarity, a flash of understanding. These creatures were tied to the discordant energy, to the breach. They were a part of it. I needed to act and fast. The creatures lunged, moving with an impossible speed. Their shadowy forms seemed to stretch, their tendril-like limbs reaching for me. I ducked, rolling to the side, the chilling whoosh of their passage rustling my hair. One of the tendrils lashed out, striking a piece of the shattered alien box, and the fragment instantly dissolved into black dust. My mind raced, the serpent symbol guiding my thoughts with blinding speed. The obsidian entities had activated me, made me a conduit. I could perceive energy, interact with it. The source of this interference was the portal, the breach itself, and the creatures were its extensions. I needed to close it. But how? I had no idea how the original boxes worked, let alone a violently breached portal. I scrambled further back, putting more distance between myself and the advancing creatures. Their glowing red eyes seemed to burn through the gloom, fixed on me. They were three now, another having pulled itself fully through the shimmering tear. Then another flash of insight, fueled by the serpent's urgent pulse. The energy lines, the cosmic network. The obsidian entities had shown me how to perceive them, how to interact with them, how the natural nodes functioned as a part of a larger global circuit. This breach, this chaotic portal, was a disruption within that circuit. I pressed my hand against the cold, volcanic rock of the canyon wall. The serpent symbol flared, and I could feel the deep, resonant hum of the earth, muted and distorted by the chaotic energy of the breach, but still there, a constant, underlying pulse. It was like trying to hear a whispered secret over a crashing wave, but the serpent amplified it, brought it into focus. The creatures advanced again, their shadowy forms oozing across the ground. One of them raised a pseudopod-like arm, and the air around it shimmered violently, a localized burst of that jarring, discordant frequency. I felt a sharp, stabbing pain in my head, a spike of pure static. I closed my eyes, focusing all my will, all my newfound perception on the serpent symbol. I visualized the stable, natural energy lines of the earth, the calm, orderly flow I had felt at the stone table and the North Rim. And then I tried to impose that order onto the chaos. It was like trying to physically reshape a hurricane with my bare hands. The discordant energy screamed back at me, a violent backlash that made my nose bleed, a thin, hot trickle against my cold skin. My body convulsed, but I held my focus, held the image of the serpent, twisting and intertwining, acting as a filter, a stabilizer. The thought voice returned, clearer this time, cutting through the static. Resonance, align, contain. Resonance, that was the key, not brute force, but harmony. I had to align my own internal resonance, the frequency of the serpent symbol, with the underlying resonance of the earth itself, and then use that stable frequency to counter the chaotic energy of the breach. I opened my eyes. The shadowy creatures were closer now, their forms more defined, their red eyes burning with hungry malice. They sensed my struggle, my vulnerability. I pushed back against the pain, against the fear, channeling all my focus into the serpent. I felt it, glowing fiercely in my chest, a beacon of pure, stable energy. I extended my hands towards the shimmering portal, not physically, but with my intent, with the power of the symbol. I visualized the portal not as a tear, but as a discordant note in a vast, cosmic symphony. And I, through the serpent, was the conductor, trying to bring it back into harmony. I felt the serpent's energy flow through my arms, through my hands, out into the chaotic air of the canyon. The air shimmered around my outstretched hands, not with the purple green of the portal, but with a faint amber glow, the color of the serpent. The discordant hum of the canyon wavered, a brief, almost imperceptible falter in its aggression. The shadowy creatures hesitated, their forms rippling, their red eyes narrowing. They seemed to sense the shift, the counterforce emerging. I pushed harder, pouring more of my nascent power into the task. My muscles tensed, my teeth gritted. It was a purely mental effort, but it felt like the heaviest physical labor I had ever undertaken. The serpent symbol roared to life, a silent, internal scream of pure energy. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, the tendrils of black smoke emanating from the portal began to recede, coiling back into the shimmering vortex. The sparks crackling at its edges lessened, their intensity dimming. The purple-green light of the portal itself seemed to flicker, to waver. The shadow creatures snarled, a guttural vibration that shook the very ground. They recoiled, their forms shrinking, becoming less distinct. They were clearly weakened by the stabilization of their chaotic source. But they were not defeated. With a renewed surge of malevolence, they lunged, no longer caring about the energy shifts, driven only by their predatory instinct. I knew I couldn't hold the stabilizing resonance and defend myself simultaneously. I needed a distraction. My gaze flickered to the shattered fragments of the original alien box scattered on the ground. They still pulsed with faint amber light, residual energy from the original node. They were not part of the chaos. They were remnants of the order. Another flash of insight. The serpent symbol had guided me to perceive the energy lines, to interact with the natural flow. These fragments, however broken, were still connected to that network. With a desperate surge of adrenaline, I shifted my focus from the portal to the closest fragment, a shard of dark gray metal pulsating with a faint, familiar amber glow. I poured my intent into it, urged by the serpent. The fragment vibrated, then lifted slightly from the ground, hovering for a moment, then shot forward like a projectile. It slammed into the lead shadow creature with a silent impact. There was no sound, but where the fragment hit, a small, amber burst of light erupted, and the shadow creature shrieked, a soundless scream that vibrated in my very core, a pure note of agony. Its form buckled, twisted violently, and a part of its shadowy body seemed to dissipate, dissolving into nothingness. The other two creatures recoiled, their red eyes burning with something akin to fear. They turned, suddenly, lurching back towards the portal, attempting to retreat. I seized the opportunity. With renewed focus, I poured every ounce of my will into the portal, into the resonant frequency of the serpent. I felt the entire canyon humming, vibrating, aligning with my intent. The purple-green chaos screamed in protest, fighting back with every ethereal fiber of its being, but I was pushing harder, stronger. The shimmering vortex began to shrink, to constrict, its violent crackling diminishing. The tendrils of dark smoke writhed one last time, then were pulled back into the rapidly closing tier. The two remaining shadow creatures, struggling to get back through, seemed to be caught, parts of their forms absorbed by the contracting light. They twisted, contorted, their silent screams palpable in the air, until they were no more, sucked back into the void from which they came. With a final, agonizing surge of power, I felt the portal collapse in on itself, drawing the last vestiges of the purple-green light inward. There was a sudden, sickening implosion felt more than heard, a violent snap in the fabric of reality. Then silence. Absolute, profound silence. Not my new, filtered silence, but the deafening vacuum of the stone table, the absence of all sound, all energy, all life. The air grew still, the strange chill dissipated, and the eerie luminescence faded, plunging the chamber into utter darkness. I collapsed, my knees giving out, my body screaming in protest. I lay sprawled on the cold, hard ground, gasping for breath, my mind reeling. The serpent symbol in my chest was still, utterly still, its amber glow extinguished, its energy utterly depleted. I was empty, hollowed out, as if every drop of my life force had been drained. The darkness was absolute, heavy, oppressive. I fumbled for my flashlight, my hands shaking so violently I almost dropped it. When I finally switched it on, its beam cut through the gloom, revealing the chamber. The portal was gone. There was no shimmering vortex, no crackling energy. Only a smooth, dark wall of volcanic rock, as if the tier had never existed, as if the canyon had always been this unbroken. The shattered fragments of the alien box were still there, glinting faintly under my flashlight beam, but they too were inert, their amber glow gone. The scorch marks on the ground where the shadow creatures had stood were the only physical proof of the terrifying battle. I lay there for a long time, trying to regain my breath to process the impossible. I had closed a dimensional breach. I had fought creatures of shadow and chaos. Ben, a wilderness guide, had just saved something. The earth, the balance. I had no idea of the scale of what I had done, only the profound exhaustion and the lingering terror of what I had faced. Slowly, painstakingly, I pushed myself up. Every muscle ached, every bone protested. My head throbbed, and a fresh trickle of blood ran from my nose, a stark reminder of the energy backlash. I felt completely drained, empty. The serpent symbol, usually a vibrant presence, was now a dull, heavy weight in my chest, a cold, unresponsive mass. I stumbled out of the chamber, navigating the treacherous canyon floor by the weak beam of my flashlight. The heavy, oppressive silence remained, a stark contrast to the familiar, filtered quiet I had grown used to. This was the vacuum, the aftermath of a major energetic disruption. The land itself seemed to be holding its breath, recovering from the assault. The ascent out of the canyon was a blur of pain and sheer willpower. I moved on instinct, my enhanced senses muted, my body running on fumes. I finally pulled myself over the last rise back into the open desert, gasping for air. The night sky was a vast, star-dusted canvas, a stark contrast to the hellish gloom of the canyon. The air, though still hot, felt clean, pure, devoid of the discordant energy. My truck, a solid, reassuring silhouette against the desert night, was a welcome sight. I collapsed into the driver's seat, too exhausted to even start the engine. I just sat there, staring blankly out into the endless desert, my mind a jumble of fractured images, shimmering portals, shadowy creatures, the agonizing pull of discordant energy, the desperate surge of the serpent symbol. The thought voice, faint and distant now, barely a whisper in the vast emptiness of my mind, returned. Containment achieved, Ben, the balance holds for now. The conduits are tested, others awaken, prepare. Prepare, the word echoed in the silence, a cold, stark command. I had done something monumental, something that had pushed me beyond my limits, but it was just a temporary reprieve. The threat was still out there. The interference was not a singular event. and there were others, other conduits, other activated individuals being tested, being awakened. The profound exhaustion settled even deeper, weighing me down, but beneath it, a new kind of resolve began to form. I was a part of this. I was no longer just Ben, a guide who stumbled into a cosmic mystery. I was a defender, a conduit, a weapon against an unseen threat. My gaze drifted to my chest, to where the serpent symbol lay dormant. It was quiet now, but I knew it wasn't gone. It was resting, recharging, preparing for the next encounter. And so was I. The drive back to civilization, to a place where I could rest, refuel, and regroup, was a silent, grim journey. The questions swirling in my mind were immense, terrifying. What was this balance they spoke of? What was the threat that awakened? And how many other conduits were out there, fighting their own silent battles in forgotten corners of the earth? I didn't have answers, but I had a purpose, and that in itself was a terrifying kind of clarity. My journey was far from over. It had just entered a new, more dangerous phase. I had faced the unknown, and I had survived. Now I had to understand, and I had to prepare. The silent war had begun. I drove until the pre-dawn light began to paint the eastern sky in soft pastels, pushing through the last vestiges of my physical and mental endurance. I needed to escape the stark, silent emptiness of the Mojave, to find a place where the human hum could offer a temporary grounding, even if muted by my altered senses. My body screamed for rest, but my mind was a churning tempest of alien visions and newfound understanding. Eventually, I pulled off the highway and found a small, nondescript motel on the outskirts of a forgotten desert town, a collection of faded buildings clinging to life by the sheer force of habit. The flickering neon sign advertising vacancy seemed a sardonic invitation to my new reality. The muted sounds of a distant train, the faint hum of the motel's ancient air conditioning unit, were a strange, distorted comfort. Inside the sterile, anonymous room, I collapsed onto the bed, too drained to even shower. The exhaustion was absolute, a heavy shroud that pulled me into a fitful, dream-haunted sleep. The alien visions returned, but they were different now. Less terrifying, more instructive. I saw the shadow creatures not just as adversaries, but as distortions, parasitic entities feeding on chaotic energy. I saw the Earth's energy grid not as a static map, but as a living, pulsating network, constantly shifting, constantly vulnerable. And I saw the obsidian entities, the ancient guardians, observing, guiding, but never directly interfering, always using conduits like me. Their cold, ancient chorus echoed, "The will of the conduits must be paramount. The balance is maintained by integration, not imposition." I woke hours later, drenched in sweat, but with a surprising sense of clarity. The serpent symbol in my chest was no longer dormant. It hummed with a renewed, steady power, its amber glow vibrant in my mind's eye. It felt recharged, stronger, more refined. And with its reawakening came a deeper understanding, a more intuitive grasp of the information that had been flooded into my mind. I got up, my body still aching, but the profound exhaustion had receded, replaced by a tense, alert energy. I showered, letting the hot water sluice away the desert dust and the lingering chill of the canyon. As I dried off, I caught my reflection in the mirror. My face was pale, drawn with dark circles under my eyes, but there was a new intensity in my gaze, a grim determination that hadn't been there before. The faint red mark on my forehead was gone, as always, but the phantom warmth, the subtle pressure, remained. I examined my sat phone. As expected, it was utterly dead, a silent testament to the forces I had encountered. I simply put it aside. It was useless now, a relic of a past life. I spent the rest of the day in that quiet motel room, poring over maps, trying to make sense of the new information, trying to integrate my experiences. The energy grid, the conduits, the threat, it was all coalescing into a terrifying yet undeniable reality. The Mojave Breach was not an isolated incident. It was a sign, a probing attack. The thought voice had said, "Others awaken." This was the crucial piece of information. I wasn't alone. There were other conduits, other individuals who had been activated, who were now part of this unseen defense system. But who were they, where were they, and how could I find them? My new perception, now fully recharged and enhanced, offered a partial answer. As I focused, closing my eyes and extending my senses, I could feel the faint, distant hum of other nodes, other gateways across the continent, even across the globe. Some pulsed with the familiar, stable resonance of natural conduits, like the stone table and North Rim. Others, however, carried a faint, unsettling echo of the discordant energy I had encountered in the Mojave. Not as violent, but present, like a subtle distortion in the background hum. These were potential breach points, or perhaps even active breaches, smaller in scale, but just as insidious. And among the myriad of faint pulses, one stood out. Not a node, not a gateway, but a distinct human resonance far to the south, deep in the mountains of New Mexico. It was a powerful, stable hum, unlike the subtle energy of a mere conduit point. It felt like another person, another serpent symbol, glowing with an internal amber light. This wasn't a place, it was an individual, a conduit, an awakened one. The thought voice confirmed it, a cold, clear whisper in my mind. Another tether, seek, collaborate. A wave of relief, profound and unexpected, washed over me. I wasn't truly alone. There was someone else, someone who understood, someone who could help me navigate this impossible reality. The isolation, the crushing burden of a secret too vast to share, began to lift, replaced by a burgeoning hope. But the fear remained. If I could sense this other conduit, could the shadow creatures or whatever entity orchestrated them also sense us? Were we beacons, drawing attention? The thought was chilling. I looked at the map again, tracing the path from my current location to New Mexico. It was a long drive through more desolate stretches of the Southwest. But this time, I wasn't just following a mysterious pull. I was seeking a connection, a fellow traveler on this terrifying new path. I packed my minimal gear, leaving the dead-sat phone in the motel room. It felt like shedding a final skin, a last connection to my old life. The silence outside was no longer oppressive. It was a familiar friend, a filter that would guide me through the world. The serpent symbol pulsed with renewed vigor, its amber light a steady beacon in my mind. As I checked out of the motel, the indifferent clerk barely looked up from her computer. To her, I was just another traveler passing through, anonymous and unremarkable. She had no idea that she was speaking to someone who had just averted a dimensional catastrophe, someone who was now a living instrument in a cosmic defense. The irony was stark and strangely liberating. I climbed back into my Tacoma, the engine starting with a familiar growl that was now a comforting presence, though still muted by my senses. I turned the truck east, towards New Mexico, towards the promise of connection, of shared understanding. The sun was rising higher, casting long shadows across the desert, illuminating a path into an uncertain future. The drive across Arizona and into New Mexico was a blur of heightened senses and grim determination. The landscape, once a familiar comfort, was now a tapestry of energy lines, subtle currents, and hidden nodes. I could feel the deep pulse of the earth beneath my tires, the faint electrical hum of distant towns, the magnetic anomalies of ancient geological formations. The serpent symbol in my chest was my constant companion, an internal compass. a translator for this newly perceived reality. The hum of the other conduit, the awakened tether in New Mexico, grew stronger with every mile, a distinct, resonant frequency that stood out from the ambient energy of the land. It wasn't a note of immense power like the stone table or the North Rim, but a personal resonance, unique and vibrant, unmistakably human. It felt like a mirror, an echo of my own activated state. As I neared my destination, the landscape shifted once more. The vast open plains gave way to the rugged, pine-clad mountains of northern New Mexico. The air grew cooler, crisper, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. The target resonance was high in these mountains, a remote, secluded location, far from any major roads or towns. It seemed the entities, in their infinite wisdom, chose their conduits in places of solitude, away from the distracting noise of civilization. I eventually turned off the paved road onto a winding, unpaved track, well-maintained but clearly leading to a private residence. The hum of the other conduit was now strong, almost directly ahead. It wasn't the chaotic discord of the Mojave, nor the cold, ancient power of the obsidian entities. It was a warm, steady frequency, a beacon of hope in this bewildering new world. The track finally opened into a clearing nestled deep in the forest. A small, rustic cabin stood there, built of rough-hewn logs, smoke curling lazily from its stone chimney. A well-tended garden bloomed beside it, a splash of vibrant color against the muted greens and browns of the forest. It was a picture of peaceful, isolated existence. And in front of the cabin, a woman stood, watering her plants. She was of indeterminate age, perhaps in her late 30s or early 40s, with striking silver hair pulled back in a practical braid. Her face was lined, weathered by sun and wind, but her eyes, when she looked up, were piercing, ancient, and held a depth of knowledge that sent a shiver down my spine. She was wearing simple, practical clothes, a worn denim shirt and canvas trousers, and held a watering can in her hand. As I killed the engine of my Tacoma, the usual pervasive silence of my perception settled, but this time it was infused with an additional, powerful resonance. The serpent symbol in my chest flared, mirrored by an unmistakable amber glow from her own. It was not a physical light, but an internal perception, a recognition between awakened conduits. She didn't show surprise at my arrival. No shock, no fear, only a calm, steady gaze that seemed to penetrate directly into my soul. It was as if she had been expecting me. She slowly lowered her watering can, placing it gently on the ground. Her movements were deliberate, unhurried, radiating an aura of profound stillness and quiet power. "You're late," she said, her voice surprisingly soft, yet clear and resonant, untouched by the filtering silence that usually muted others' voices. It was the first time I had heard another human speak with such clarity since my activation. It was as if her own activated state allowed her voice to bypass my internal filter. My jaw went slack. You knew I was coming," I managed, my own voice sounding rough, unused. She smiled faintly, a wise, knowing smile that barely touched her lips. The network hums, bend, and the threads connect. When a new conduit is activated, particularly one so forcefully, the vibrations ripple. Her gaze held mine unwavering. I felt you activate at the stone table. I felt your panic, your terror, and I felt your journey to the North Rim, your true awakening. Then the Mojave, a violent, chaotic pulse. I felt you close the breach. It was impressive. My mind reeled. She had felt it all, everything. The terrifying solitude of my journey had been an illusion. I had been observed, monitored, felt by someone else who understood. The relief was immense, almost overwhelming, but it was laced with a fresh wave of fear. If she could feel me, could they? "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. My name is Anya, she replied, stepping forward, her hands now clasped in front of her. And like you, I am a conduit, a tether, an awakened one. I have been for a very long time. Her statement hung in the air, heavy with unspoken history. A long time, I repeated, trying to grasp the implications. She nodded, her ancient eyes meeting mine. Long enough to see several cycles, long enough to understand the ebb and flow of the balance, long enough to witness countless threats and countless victories, some small, some planetary. The sheer scope of her words was dizzying. Cycles, threats, planetary victories. This was far, far bigger than I had imagined. The entities, I began, struggling to form the words. The obsidian beings, they chose you too. They do choose in the way humans understand choice, Ben, Anya explained, her voice gentle yet authoritative. They facilitate, they activate, the potential is already within us, a dormant seed waiting for the right catalyst, the right resonance. She paused, her gaze drifting to the distant mountains. You have a strong resonance, Ben, a raw, untamed power, and a deep connection to the earth. That's why you were activated. But why me? Why now? I asked, the questions tumbling out. And what is this balance? What is the threat? Anya sighed, a soft, weary sound. She gestured towards a small wooden bench by the cabin door. Come sit, there is much to discuss, much to understand, and much to do. I walked towards the bench, my legs feeling strangely heavy, almost numb. Every step was a journey into an unknown realm, but this time I wasn't alone. I sat down, facing Anya, whose presence radiated a calm, grounding energy that was a stark contrast to the chaotic energies I had just faced. The balance, Ben, Anya began, her voice taking on a more serious tone, is the fundamental principle of existence. A delicate equilibrium between order and chaos, creation and destruction, life and oblivion. The universe in its vastness seeks this balance, and Earth, our planet, is a vital node in this cosmic tapestry, a unique, vibrant nexus of life and energy. She paused, her gaze sweeping the surrounding forest as if reading its ancient secrets. The obsidian entities, the ones you encountered, are the ancient guardians of this balance. They are not physical beings in the way we understand. They are consciousnesses, vast. The balance, Ben, Anya began, her voice taking on a more serious tone, is the fundamental principle of existence. A delicate equilibrium between order and chaos, creation and destruction, life and oblivion. The universe in its vastness seeks this balance, and Earth, our planet, is a vital node in this cosmic tapestry, a unique, vibrant nexus of life and energy. She paused, her gaze sweeping the surrounding forest as if reading its ancient secrets. The obsidian entities, the ones you encountered, are the ancient guardians of this balance. They are not physical beings in the way we understand. They are consciousnesses, vast and timeless, existing at the intersection of dimensions. They created the network you've perceived, the grid of resonant energy that crisscrosses our world, connecting sacred sites, geological anomalies, and what we call nodes or gateways. This network is both a defense system and a conduit for the planet's own life force. But if they're so powerful, I interjected, still struggling to reconcile the cosmic scale with the rustic cabin, why don't they just fix things themselves? Why do they need us? Anya turned her ancient gaze back to me, a flicker of something that might have been amusement in her eyes. A valid question, Ben, and one I asked myself for many, many years. The entities exist beyond our dimension, beyond direct physical interaction with this reality. They observe, they guide, they facilitate, but they cannot directly interfere. Their immense power, if unleashed here, would shatter the very balance they seek to protect. It would be like trying to swat a fly with a supernova. She leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping to a near whisper. The balance in their perception must be maintained through integration, not imposition. It must be defended by those within the threatened dimension. That's where we, the conduits, come in. We are their anchor points, their instruments within this reality. We are the ones who can interact with the physical and energetic layers of this world. So the serpent symbol, I started, placing my hand over my chest, feeling the steady hum. Is your tether, Anya finished, her voice soft. Your connection, your activation. It is a refined, energetic imprint, allowing you to perceive, process, and ultimately interact with the network. It amplifies your latent abilities, your inherent resonance with the planet. Everyone has this potential, this dormant seed. The entities simply provide the catalyst for its awakening. And the threat, I asked, the memory of the shadow creatures still fresh and chilling. The interference. Anya's expression grew serious, her eyes darkening. The balance is not a static state, Ben. It is a constant negotiation, a dynamic tension. There are forces that seek to disrupt it, to unravel the fabric of reality for their own purposes. These forces are many and their origins are varied, but they share a common goal: to feed on chaos, to consume vibrant energy, to twist the orderly flow of existence into something grotesque and self-serving. The creatures in the Mojave, I murmured, a shiver running down my spine. One manifestation of those forces, Anya confirmed. They are dimensional parasites attracted to points of weakness in the veil between realities. The Mojave node, as you sensed, was not a natural gateway like the stone table. It was an older, less stable point, one that had been compromised, weakened over time. The original box, a containment field, was decaying, allowing a subtle bleed-through of chaotic energy. The entities pushed you there to contain it, to prevent a full breach. And you felt all of this? I asked, amazed. Yes, my symbol hummed with alarm when the Mojave distortion began. I knew a breach was imminent. And when your resonance, newly activated and incredibly strong, approached, I knew you were the one. I observed your struggle, Ben, your fight, your victory. She offered a rare, genuine smile, a flash of warmth in her ancient eyes. You did well, very well for a first encounter with such raw chaos. The compliment coming from her felt like a powerful affirmation. But you said cycles, I pressed. This has happened before. Oh, many times, Anya nodded, gazing out at the mountains. Civilizations rise and fall. Humanity builds, forgets, rediscovers, and the balance is constantly challenged. Sometimes the threats are subtle, slow erosion. Other times they are violent incursions like the one you just faced. Over the millennia, the entities have activated countless conduits at critical junctures to push back against these encroaching forces. We are part of a long, unbroken lineage. So there are others, I asked, a fresh wave of hope mixed with dread. Many across the globe. Some are aware, some are still dormant, waiting for a catalyst like you were, and some have fallen. The path of a conduit is not without peril, Ben. It is a lonely, dangerous road. Her eyes sharpened. And the current threat, the darkness the entities spoke of, is particularly insidious. It is not just about isolated breaches anymore. It is a more coordinated, pervasive attempt to unravel the network itself. You saw the stone table, the North Rim. These are immense generators. If they fall, the entire planetary system could be compromised. Anya rose from the bench, her movements fluid and graceful despite her apparent age. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. You have taken in much, Ben. Your mind is still processing a cosmic truth. Before we discuss strategies and other conduits, we must refine your understanding of your own abilities. You acted instinctively in the Mojave, drawing on raw power and intuition. But to truly stand against what is coming, you must be precise. You must be controlled. She walked towards a small, gnarled pine tree at the edge of the clearing. Its needles were sparse, its bark cracked and ancient. She placed her hand on its trunk, her eyes closing for a moment. I watched, fascinated, as a faint, amber glow mirroring my own internal perception seemed to emanate from her hand, sinking into the tree. After a few seconds, she withdrew her hand. "Feel it, Ben," she instructed, her eyes still closed, a serene expression on her face. "Feel the life force within this tree, its connection to the earth, to the network. Feel its history, its struggle, its resilience." I walked over hesitantly and placed my hand on the same spot on the tree. Closing my eyes, I focused on the serpent symbol within me, urging it to open my senses. At first, there was only the rough bark, the cool air. Then, slowly, as I pushed my awareness outward, I felt it. A faint, almost imperceptible thrumming within the wood. It was the tree's life, its sap flowing, its roots grasping. But deeper beneath that was a connection, a fine thread of energy linking it to the vast, unseen network of the planet. I felt the subtle vibrations of the soil, the slow geological pulse of the mountain, the flow of unseen water deep beneath the earth. It was like hearing a complex symphony, but understanding only a few notes. "Now try to amplify its natural resonance," Anya's voice guided, soft but firm. "Don't force it, don't impose, align with it. Become one with its frequency, then gently, subtly encourage it to strengthen." I focused, trying to mimic what I imagined Anya had done. I pictured the serpent symbol glowing brightly, its energy flowing from my chest down my arm into the tree. I tried to feel the tree's frequency and then almost unconsciously match it, deepen it. It was like singing harmony with an existing note rather than trying to overpower it. A peculiar sensation bloomed in my hand, a warmth that spread through the tree. The faint thrumming intensified, becoming clearer, stronger. I felt a subtle surge of vitality, not just from the tree, but through it, connecting to something larger, something ancient. The pine needles seemed to glow with a faint internal green, a perception rather than a physical sight. I felt the tree's gratitude, a pure, simple burst of silent energy. "Good, Ben," Anya said, opening her eyes. "Very good. You have a natural affinity. You are a true tether. You understand the principle of integration. The entities chose well." I pulled my hand away, exhilarated and exhausted. What was that? "You connected to its life force, amplified its resonance with the planetary network, and subtly enhanced its vitality," Anya explained. "It is a small thing, but it demonstrates your ability to interact with the energy of the land to encourage its natural flow. This is the foundation, Ben, the subtle art of a conduit. We don't create energy, we redirect it, stabilize it, amplify it, or when necessary, disrupt the chaotic flow." We spent the rest of the day in a similar fashion, Anya guiding me through exercises designed to refine my control. She had me identify specific energy currents flowing through the clearing, distinguish between various frequencies, and even subtly shift the direction of a faint underground water current, causing a small, localized shimmer in the dry earth. It was mentally taxing, pushing my enhanced senses to their limits, but with each successful attempt, the serpent symbol in my chest pulsed with renewed strength and my understanding deepened. Anya also taught me about the different types of nodes. Primary nodes, like the stone table and the north rim, immense power generators or receivers, vital to the global network. These are ancient, established, and usually heavily protected by subtle energetic fields. The secondary nodes, smaller, localized points of energy concentration, often at ley lines intersections or geological anomalies. They act as relays and distributors. Breach nodes, areas where the veil between dimensions is thin or compromised, making them vulnerable to intrusion, like the Mojave site. These are the most dangerous. The key to managing these breaches, Ben, Anya explained as we sat eating a simple meal of stew and homemade bread by the cabin's hearth, is not always brute force. As you experienced in the Mojave, sometimes it's about aligning the chaotic frequencies back to the natural resonance of Earth, essentially healing the tear in reality. Other times, it might require a more disruptive approach. It depends on the nature of the breach and the entity trying to push through. So, what happens next? I asked, feeling a strange sense of belonging in this quiet cabin, talking about cosmic threats as if they were everyday concerns. The thought voice said, "Others awaken and prepare." What are we preparing for? Anya put down her bowl, her gaze becoming distant again, as if peering into another realm. The activity is increasing, Ben. The darkness is becoming more aggressive, more coordinated. The Mojave was a significant breach, but not the only one. My senses and the deeper whispers from the entities indicate that smaller distortions, subtle intrusions are occurring with alarming frequency. They are probing, testing the network, seeking weak points. And the other conduits. We need to find them, or rather, those who are ready to be found. Not all activated conduits are fully aware of their role or even the changes within themselves. Some might simply perceive the world differently, experience strange coincidences, or develop unexplained talents. They need guidance, activation. Others, like you, will be thrown into the deep end, forced to confront the truth directly. How do we find them? Your serpent symbol is now stronger, more attuned, Anya said, tapping her own chest, the familiar amber glow flaring in my perception. You felt my resonance. You can extend that same perception, seek out other activated conduits. It's a matter of focus and intent, but it's not just about finding them. It's about assessing them, understanding their unique resonance, their strengths. Every conduit is different, a unique instrument in the symphony of the balance. She pointed to a large, ancient map hanging on the wall of her cabin, a map of the world but covered with intricate symbols and lines that pulsed faintly with energy in my perception. This is a representation of the network as I perceive it. The primary nodes are marked, some dormant, some active. The lines indicate the flow of telluric energy. And these, she traced a series of fainter, shimmering points. These are potential conduits. The individuals I've sensed over the years but haven't yet made contact with or couldn't due to circumstances or their lack of readiness. I stared at the map, overwhelmed. It was like looking at the nervous system of the planet. There were dozens of these shimmering points scattered across every continent. Our immediate priority, Anya continued, her voice firm, is to investigate a new cluster of anomalous distortions. They are not as violent as the Mojave, but they are spreading, concentrated along the western coast of North America and extending south into Mexico. They are subtle energetic leaks, seeping chaos into the network. If left unchecked, they will weaken the entire regional grid, creating larger vulnerabilities. You mean more breaches? Precisely. Imagine a net with small tiers. Each tier weakens the integrity of the whole, and these are the initial probes of the darkness. They are intelligent, Ben. They are learning our defenses, finding our weak spots. Anya rolled up a smaller, more detailed map, a topographical chart of the Pacific Northwest. The most concerning cluster is centered around the Cascade Mountains, specifically near Mount Shasta. It's a very powerful secondary node, known for its unique spiritual resonance. If it falls, a significant portion of the Western network would be compromised. Mount Shasta, I remembered it from my guiding days, a towering, snow-capped volcano, steeped in mysticism and legend. A place of intense natural power. The entities have urged vigilance, Anya continued, and action. They have given us a window of opportunity before the larger threats solidify. We must move, Ben. We must stem these leaks. I asked, a mix of apprehension and anticipation coursing through me. Anya met my gaze, a steely resolve in her ancient eyes. Yes, Ben, you are ready, and this is your next step. You have proven yourself capable of handling a significant breach alone. Now you will learn to navigate the subtleties of the spreading chaos, and perhaps we will find another conduit along the way. The entities hinted at a potential awakening in that region, someone with a unique connection to elemental energies. The thought of working with another conduit, especially one as experienced as Anya, was both reassuring and daunting. The loneliness I had carried for so long began to truly dissipate, replaced by a sense of shared purpose. When do we leave? I asked, a new fire igniting in my chest. At dawn, Anya replied, a faint smile touching her lips. Rest, Ben, you have faced much. Tomorrow the true work begins. The next morning, under a sky painted with streaks of crimson and gold, Anya and I set out. Her vehicle was a well-maintained, unassuming Subaru Outback, packed with gear that hinted at her preparedness for extended wilderness journeys. My Tacoma followed, carrying its own burden of past and future. The drive was long, traversing the vast distances of the American West. This time I wasn't alone in my perception. Anya, sitting beside me in the passenger seat of her car, served as a constant point of reference, a stable, resonant hum that helped me navigate the increasingly complex energetic landscape. We communicated sparingly, often through subtle shifts in perception, through shared intuitive understanding. As we drove north through Nevada and into Oregon, the subtle distortions Anya had spoken of became more pronounced. I felt them as faint, discordant notes in the grand symphony of the Earth's energy. They were like static on a radio signal, small but persistent, gradually blurring the clarity of the underlying network. My serpent symbol pulsed, not with the frantic urgency of the Mojave, but with a steady, watchful awareness. These distortions, Anya explained, gesturing towards the invisible currents I was perceiving, are energetic pollutants. They don't necessarily manifest as breaches, not yet, but they weaken the network's integrity, making it more susceptible to larger incursions. Think of it like a slow-acting poison, gradually making the patient vulnerable to disease. Our first target was a series of small, isolated valleys in the northern Cascades, places known for their pristine beauty and ancient forests, far from human settlement. As we drove deeper into the wilderness, the air grew heavy, not with the oppressive chill of the Mojave, but with a pervasive sense of unease, a subtle drain on my energy. The vibrant green of the forest seemed muted, the rushing rivers less lively. We parked her Subaru near a trailhead and continued on foot, carrying lighter packs than I was used to for such a serious mission. Anya moved with an effortless grace, her silver hair gleaming against the dark green of the pines. She seemed perfectly at home in the silent wilderness, her senses attuned to every rustle, every scent, every energetic ripple. The first distortion we located was near a cluster of ancient growth trees, a grove that should have pulsed with life. Instead, it felt hollow. The energy here was being subtly siphoned, drained away, leaving a void. I could see it in my mind's eye as a faint, shimmering, translucent veil, a parasitic presence subtly attached to the node. "This is a feeder distortion," Anya whispered, her voice barely audible, yet clear in my enhanced hearing. "It's like a spiritual leech, slowly drawing off the ambient energy. If left unchecked, it will exhaust the node, turning it into a dead spot, a void in the network." She instructed me to place my hands on the base of one of the ancient trees, urging me to focus the serpent's energy not to heal, but to sever the connection. Visualize the distortion as an invasive growth, an energetic vine, she commanded. Feel its attachment, its parasitic roots. Then, with pure intent, focus your serpent's energy to cut it, not violently, but precisely, like a surgeon's scalpel. It was harder than I expected. The distortion, though subtle, was tenacious. It felt slimy, resistant, like pulling a stubborn weed. I focused all my will, all the power of the serpent symbol, channeling it into a sharp, resonant frequency. I felt a surge of warmth, a focused beam of amber energy flow from my hands. There was no physical sound, but in my mind I heard a faint, high-pitched whine like something being torn. Then, with a shudder, the translucent veil shimmered, buckled, and dissipated like smoke caught in a strong breeze. The heavy feeling lifted. The air in the grove seemed to lighten, to breathe again. The ancient trees pulsed with renewed vitality, their green becoming richer, more vibrant. "Excellent, Ben," Anya praised, a rare hint of approval in her voice. "Clean, efficient." We continued for days, hiking through the majestic, silent wilderness, locating and severing similar feeder distortions. Each one was subtly different, requiring a slightly varied approach, a nuanced application of the serpent's energy. Sometimes it was a focused burst, sometimes a gentle unweaving, sometimes a strong, steady push. With each success, my control grew, my understanding deepened, and the serpent symbol within me hummed with greater clarity. I was learning to be a surgeon of energy, restoring the natural flow, stitch by energetic stitch. The work was exhausting but profoundly satisfying. I felt like I was truly making a difference, pushing back against the encroaching darkness, one imperceptible act at a time. The wilderness, once a place of serene escape, was now a battleground, a canvas of hidden energies. As we neared Mount Shasta, the primary source of the distortions, the energetic interference became more intense. The air itself seemed to crackle with an unseen tension. The distortions here were larger, more complex, almost like tangled knots in the energy grid, radiating a constant, low-level discord. "This is where the real threat lies," Anya murmured as we stood on a high ridge overlooking the imposing, snow-capped peak of Shasta. The mountain loomed majestic and ancient, but I could feel the subtle corruption, the draining presence radiating from its core. Mount Shasta is a powerful primary node, a significant anchor in the global network. It is not easily breached. But the darkness is attempting to slowly suffocate it, to drain its power until it can be easily subverted. "How do we stop it?" I asked, my voice tight. Anya pointed to a specific point on the mountain's flank, a jagged, ancient rock formation. "There, that is the nexus of the primary distortion. A powerful parasitic entity has rooted itself there, subtly siphoning the mountain's immense energy. We cannot sever it directly, as it is too deeply entwined with the node's own resonance. We need a different approach." "What kind of approach?" "We need to overwhelm it, not with brute force, but with a concentrated infusion of pure, stable earth energy, amplified by our combined resonance. We need to flood its system, essentially drowning it in the light it seeks to suppress." "Our combined resonance," I repeated, a thrill of apprehension running through me. Anya nodded, her eyes fixed on Shasta. "Yes, our two serpent symbols, aligned, focused, channeled into a single, powerful surge. It will be taxing, Ben, potentially dangerous. But it is the only way to purge this core distortion without damaging the mountain's own delicate energetic structure." We set up a small camp high on the ridge, preparing for the task ahead. The night was cold, clear, and absolutely silent, save for the distant howl of a coyote. The stars were brilliant, a vast, indifferent tapestry above us. The hum of the serpent symbol in my chest was strong, steady, ready. As the first rays of dawn touched the peak of Mount Shasta, painting it in hues of rose and gold, Anya and I began our ascent. The air was thin, cold, and electric with the mountain's raw power, now amplified by the distortion. We reached the jagged rock formation she had indicated, a natural altar of ancient stone, scarred by millennia of wind and ice. The distortion here was palpable, a suffocating weight that pressed in on my senses. I could feel the parasitic entity like a vast, unseen amoeba feeding greedily on the mountain's life force. It pulsed with a sickening, stagnant energy, a drain on the vibrant flow. "We will sit here," Anya instructed, indicating a flat slab of rock at the center of the formation. "Place your hands flat on the stone, clear your mind. Focus only on the serpent and on the pure, untamed energy of the earth beneath us." We sat cross-legged, facing each other, our hands resting on the cold, ancient rock. I closed my eyes, taking deep, steady breaths, centering myself. The serpent symbol flared, its amber light a warm, protective presence in my chest. I felt the deep, slow pulse of the earth, the massive energy of the mountain, a current of raw, elemental power flowing beneath my palms. "Now, Ben," Anya's voice resonated, soft yet powerful. "Align your resonance with mine. Feel my serpent, my intent. Let our energies merge, become a single, coherent force. Then channel that combined power into the mountain, into the parasitic entity. Flood it, overwhelm it, purge it." I focused, reaching out with my enhanced senses, seeking Anya's internal resonance. It was powerful, ancient, stable, like a deep river flowing through stone. I aligned my own serpent with hers, feeling a click, a seamless merging of our internal energies. It was an exhilarating sensation, a doubling of power, a profound connection that transcended words. The amber glow in my mind's eye intensified, becoming a brilliant, blinding beacon. Together we pushed. I felt the immense, combined energy flow from our merged symbols down our arms, through our hands, and into the very core of Mount Shasta. It was like unleashing a torrent, a powerful river of pure, life-affirming energy straight into the heart of the distortion. The parasitic entity screamed, a silent, psychic shriek that vibrated in my bones, a pure note of agony and rage. It recoiled, lashing out with tendrils of dark, stagnant energy, trying to push back, to cling to its foothold. The air around us grew cold, thick with the entity's struggle. My nose began to bleed again, a warm trickle down my lip, and my head throbbed violently from the sheer mental exertion. But we held firm. Anya's presence beside me was a rock, an unwavering anchor. Her strength, her centuries of experience, flowed through our merged resonance, bolstering my own. We continued to pour the combined energy into the mountain, saturating the parasitic entity, overwhelming it with pure, focused life force. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, the entity began to weaken. Its psychic screams diminished, replaced by a desperate, gurgling sound, a dying gasp. The dark, stagnant energy it radiated began to dissipate, dissolving like mist in the morning sun. I felt its grip on the mountain loosen, its parasitic roots retracting. Finally, with a last desperate shudder, the entity imploded, not with violence, but with a silent, internal collapse. There was a sudden, profound release of pressure, like a massive bubble bursting, leaving behind a vacuum of pure, clean energy. The air around us grew still, pure. The pervasive sense of unease lifted, replaced by an overwhelming sensation of peace, of vibrant, untainted power. The mountain hummed, no longer with a dissonant chord, but with a clear, resonant note of profound, ancient strength. It was like listening to the earth breathe deeply and freely. I collapsed, utterly spent, my hands falling from the stone. My body trembled, every muscle aching, every nerve ending screaming. The serpent symbol within me was calm, still, but profoundly energized, throbbing with a deep content hum. I felt emptied, yet simultaneously filled with a boundless, serene energy. Anya remained seated for a moment longer, her eyes still closed, a faint, serene smile on her lips. Then she opened her eyes, their ancient depths shining with a quiet triumph. "It is done, Ben," she said, her voice soft, weary, but filled with immense satisfaction. "The core distortion is purged, the mountain's resonance is restored." She looked at me, her smile widening. "You handled the shared resonance with remarkable control. You are a true asset, Ben, a powerful tether." I managed a weak smile, wiping the blood from my nose. "I think I just used up a year's worth of energy." "Perhaps," she chuckled, a rare, warm sound. "But you have also gained a century's worth of experience. The network here will now begin to heal. The smaller feeder distortions will wither and die without their anchor. The balance holds for now in this region." We sat there for a long time, recovering, watching the sun climb higher, bathing the majestic peak of Mount Shasta in brilliant light. The mountain, now freed from its energetic burden, seemed to pulse with renewed life, a silent testament to our efforts. "What's next?" I asked eventually, the question a reflex. The world seemed to demand constant vigilance now. Anya gazed out at the vast wilderness stretching before us. "The entities are urging us to continue south. The distortions along the coast of California and into Baja are becoming more aggressive, and there is another conduit, a particularly strong, newly awakened resonance in Southern California. The entities believe they will be crucial." My breath hitched. Another conduit. This was becoming a pattern, a growing team. "Do you know anything about them?" Anya nodded slowly. "Only what the network whispers. A young woman connected to the wild, untamed currents of the ocean. Her awakening is recent and tumultuous. She feels isolated, overwhelmed, like you did, Ben." A sense of empathy washed over me. I knew that feeling all too well. The fear, the isolation, the crushing weight of impossible knowledge. "She will need our guidance," Anya continued, rising gracefully, "and perhaps our protection. The entities fear that the darkness has already sensed her powerful awakening. She may already be a target." The thought sent a chill down my spine. The shadow creatures in the Mojave, their predatory malice, if they were after this new conduit. "We must hurry," Anya urged, her eyes fixed on the distant horizon towards the south. "The path of the conduits is a constant race against time, Ben, and the balance is a fragile thing, always on the precipice." We packed up our camp in a silence that was now filled with purpose. The exhaustion was still there, but beneath it a renewed determination burned. I was no longer just a guide, a simple man from Flagstaff. I was a conduit, a protector, part of an ancient lineage. And there was another one somewhere out there waiting for us. As we descended Mount Shasta, the sun now high in the sky, I knew my journey was far from over. This was just one battle in a silent, cosmic war, and we were heading into the heart of the next one. The mountains of California, the untamed Pacific coast, and a new, unknown ally. The stakes felt higher than ever before. The descent from Mount Shasta was quicker than the ascent, but no less impactful. My body hummed with a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. Anya, ever watchful, ensured I paced myself, reminding me that the expenditure of such concentrated energy left subtle energetic imprints, a sort of cosmic hangover. We didn't speak much, the shared experience cementing a deeper bond than any words could convey. The Subaru Outback, now a familiar and comforting presence, silently ate up the miles, heading south on highways that snaked through California's varied landscapes. As we drove, the hum of the new conduit in Southern California grew steadily stronger in my perception. It was a fascinating resonance, different from Anya's ancient, earth-rooted stability and my own raw, untamed power. This new signal pulsed with the restless, boundless energy of the ocean, deep, fluid, constantly shifting, yet immensely powerful. It felt wild, untamed, almost volatile, a mirror to the crashing waves and hidden currents of the Pacific. "She's powerful," I murmured, breaking the silence as we passed through the sprawling, sun-baked farmlands of California's Central Valley. Anya, her gaze fixed on the road, nodded. Indeed, a unique resonance. The entities hinted at a deep connection to elemental water. Such conduits are rare and their abilities can be formidable, but also potentially unpredictable, especially in the early stages of awakening. The closer we got to the coast, the more pronounced the energetic distortions became. They weren't as concentrated as those around Shasta, but they were more widespread, like a creeping energetic blight. I perceived them as faint, shimmering disturbances in the air, distortions in the subtle magnetic fields, a subtle static that grated on my enhanced senses. The vibrant, clean energy of the land seemed thinned, muted, as if something was slowly draining its vitality. "The darkness is probing," Anya explained, her voice grave. "These aren't focused attacks on specific nodes yet, but rather a blanket of interference. They are attempting to weaken the overall energetic integrity of the region to create a broad canvas of vulnerability. It's like spreading a thin layer of poison over a wide area, hoping to slowly sicken everything." We passed through dusty, sun-bleached towns, then into the sprawling urban landscapes of Southern California. The sheer density of human energy here was overwhelming, a cacophony of individual resonances, thoughts, and emotions. My filtered silence struggled to cope, threatening to crack under the strain. Anya sensed my discomfort. "Focus on the underlying network, Ben," she instructed, her voice calm and steady. "Filter out the human noise. Seek the pulse of the land beneath the concrete, the flow of the ocean beyond the cities. Your symbol can help you anchor." I concentrated, pushing my awareness deeper, past the superficial human layer, to the ancient, enduring energy of the earth itself. Slowly, the overwhelming hum of humanity receded, becoming a distant thrum, and the faint, vital pulse of the planet's network emerged, a steady, rhythmic beat beneath the chaos. The new conduit's resonance was now very strong, a vibrant, ocean-like pulse located somewhere along the rugged coastline of San Diego County. It was distinct from the surrounding distortions, a point of pure, untamed energy, but I could also feel faint, tendril-like energetic attachments to it, like shadows clinging to a bright light. "They've found her," I said, a cold knot forming in my stomach. Anya's grip on the steering wheel tightened. "As I feared, her awakening has drawn their attention. We must be swift." We veered off the interstate, navigating smaller coastal roads that wound through quaint beach towns and sprawling neighborhoods. The ocean shimmered in the late afternoon sun, a vast, mesmerizing expanse of blue. Its immense energy washed over me, a dynamic force that felt both ancient and eternally new. I could feel the new conduit's resonance resonating with it, drawing power, yet also being battered by the chaos that surrounded her. The trail led us to a remote stretch of coastline, a place where dramatic cliffs plunged into the Pacific, and the roar of the waves was a constant elemental presence. We found a small, unmarked dirt road that snaked down towards a secluded cove, barely visible from the main road. The distortions here were intense, not just the static interference, but patches of the same heavy, draining energy I had felt in the Cascades, now radiating from the very air, the very rocks. "This is a concentrated attack," Anya stated, her voice sharp with urgency. "They are attempting to isolate and overwhelm her, to convert her resonance into a breach point." We parked the Subaru amongst some scrub brush a short distance from the edge of the cliff and continued on foot. The air grew colder, heavier, charged with unseen energy. The vibrant coastal ecosystem seemed muted, the scent of salt and sea mist replaced by a faint metallic tang. My serpent symbol pulsed violently, a warning flare. As we reached the cliff edge, a breathtaking vista opened before us. Below, a small, rocky cove was being relentlessly battered by powerful waves. And there, amidst the spray and crashing foam, a figure stood. It was a young woman, perhaps in her mid-20s, dressed in simple, sand-stained clothes. Her long, dark hair was wild, whipped by the sea wind, and her bare feet were planted firmly on the wet rock. Her arms were outstretched, her body rigid, almost vibrating with tension. Around her, the air shimmered violently, distorting the light, making the very rocks seem to ripple. Her eyes, even from this distance, seemed to glow with an ethereal blue, mirroring the ocean's depth. Waves, impossibly large and powerful, crashed against the shore around her, but seemed to avoid directly touching her, parting just before they reached her, only to surge with renewed fury a few feet away. It was as if the ocean itself was her shield, responding to her command, yet also struggling against a powerful, unseen force. Tendrils of dark, shimmering energy, like ethereal smoke, pulsed around her, attempting to coalesce to wrap around her and siphon her immense power. They were subtle, less overtly menacing than the full shadow creatures of the Mojave, but no less insidious. These were smaller, more numerous entities, almost like energetic gnats swarming around her, trying to find a weakness, a way to break through her oceanic defense. "The entities are feeding on her power," Anya whispered, her face grim. "They are trying to turn her resonance into a conduit for chaos. We must intervene quickly." We scrambled down the treacherous path leading to the cove, the loose scree shifting beneath our feet. The young woman below seemed entirely focused on the struggle, oblivious to our approach. Her lips moved, a silent incantation, and the ocean responded, sending another towering wave crashing against the rocks, momentarily scattering the dark tendrils. But they regrouped, more persistent, more numerous. "Who is she?" I asked, breathless. "Her name is Alina," Anya replied, her voice strained with effort as we navigated the difficult terrain. "She is a guardian of the ocean, a conduit of the water element. Her awakening was sudden, forceful, triggered by the escalating activity of the darkness along the coast. She has been fighting them off alone for days." As we drew closer, the full intensity of the struggle became palpable. The air was thick with the clash of energies, Alina's raw, untamed oceanic power, tinged with desperation, against the insidious, draining force of the shadowy entities. My own serpent symbol pulsed with empathetic alarm. Alina suddenly stumbled, a low cry escaping her lips as one of the dark tendrils breached her defenses, briefly wrapping around her leg. A flash of pure terror crossed her face and her oceanic shield faltered. The waves around her diminished slightly, losing their focus. "Now, Ben," Anya commanded, her voice cutting through the roar of the ocean. "Channel your serpent, attack the tendrils, disperse them." I didn't hesitate. I focused all my will, the familiar amber glow igniting within my chest, channeling its energy outwards. I unleashed a focused burst of pure, resonant frequency towards the tendrils wrapped around Alina. There was no sound, but the effect was immediate. The tendril shrieked, a soundless, agonizing cry, and recoiled, dissolving into nothingness. The other tendrils, momentarily surprised, drew back. Alina, sensing the shift, looked up, her blue eyes wide with shock and a glimmer of hope as she saw us. Her gaze landed on my chest, on the invisible amber glow of my serpent symbol, a recognition passing between us. Who are you?" she gasped, her voice hoarse, barely audible over the waves. "We are allies," Anya called out, reaching her side, placing a grounding hand on Alina's shoulder. "Conduits like you, we are here to help." Anya's touch seemed to stabilize Alina, grounding her immense, chaotic power. The oceanic shield around her solidified, the waves once again surging with focused power. But the dark entities were not deterred. They returned, more numerous now, recognizing the increased opposition. They were smaller, faster, less substantial than the Mojave creatures, but their sheer number and insidious nature made them a formidable threat. They swarmed, seeking to overwhelm, to find any weak point in our combined defenses. "Ben, focus on the individual entities," Anya instructed, her eyes sweeping the swarming darkness. "Sever their connection to the greater network. Cut them off one by one. Alina, maintain your oceanic shield. Focus on keeping their numbers at bay, on pushing them back from the shore." Alina, though still trembling, nodded, her eyes flashing with renewed determination. She closed her eyes for a moment, and when they reopened, they glowed with a fierce, resolute blue. The ocean roared in response, sending a wall of water crashing towards the beach, momentarily engulfing the tendrils, dissolving some of them into harmless foam. I focused, channeling my serpent energy into precise, sharp bursts, aiming at individual tendrils. Each hit resulted in a silent shriek, a flash of amber light, and the dissipation of the entity. It was like fighting a swarm of angry, energetic insects, each one requiring a direct, precise strike. My energy flowed, warm and strong, but the sheer numbers of the entities were taxing. I could feel the drain, the constant expenditure of power. Anya stood beside Elena, her hands outstretched, radiating a calm, steady green light that subtly augmented Elena's oceanic shield, making it more resilient, more cohesive. She was channeling the Earth's grounding energy, reinforcing the raw, untamed power of the ocean. "They are trying to wear us down," Elena cried, her voice strained. "They are drawing on the general distortion in the region to endlessly replenish their numbers." She was right. For every entity I dispersed, two more seemed to shimmer into existence from the distorted air, eager to take its place. This wasn't a direct battle against a finite number of creatures. It was a fight against a creeping infestation, an energetic plague. "We need to sever their source," Anya exclaimed, her ancient eyes scanning the cliffs around us. "Ben, Elena, feel for a focal point, a central hub of distortion that is feeding these lesser entities." We closed our eyes, extending our senses, our three unique resonances merging into a shared perception. My raw earth power, Anya's ancient stability, and Alina's fluid oceanic energy combined, piercing through the chaotic noise. I felt it first, a deeper, more profound distortion emanating from a cave mouth high up on the cliff face, shrouded by overgrown foliage and mist. It was a churning vortex of stagnant, draining energy, a localized breach node. Up there, I pointed, my voice hoarse. A cave, it's a feeder breach. I can't leave the cove, Alina shouted, struggling to maintain her shield. They'll overwhelm me. You stay and hold the line, Alina, Anya commanded. Ben and I will take care of the breach. You are the anchor here. Anya turned to me, her eyes burning with fierce determination. This won't be a simple severing, Ben. This is a deliberate breach designed to be insidious. We will need to not only close it, but purify the area around it to prevent immediate remanifestation. It will require a sustained, powerful surge of combined earth and focused energy. We ascended the cliff path again, scrambling quickly, while Alina, with renewed resolve, focused her oceanic power, creating massive, focused waves that crashed directly into the swarming entities, momentarily thinning their numbers and pushing them back. Her blue eyes glowed with fierce, untamed power. Reaching the cave mouth, we found the distortion radiating from within, a swirling vortex of dark, shimmering energy, not quite a full portal, but a gushing wound in reality. It was smaller than the Mojave breach, but intensely potent, constantly spewing forth the shadowy tendrils that were attacking Alina. The air was thick with its malevolence, a sickening, cold presence that made my skin crawl. This is it, Anya said, her voice tight. Place your hands on the rock face beside the breach. Connect to the mountain's enduring power, Ben, and funnel everything through your serpent. Channel pure, untainted earth energy into that chaotic vortex. We need to flood it with light and stability. I nodded, placing my hands on the cold, damp rock, feeling the ancient, steadfast energy of the cliff face beneath my palms. Anya placed her hands on the rock beside mine, her ancient resonance merging with mine, a familiar, powerful synergy. Our combined serpent symbols flared, a brilliant, blinding amber radiating intense heat. Now push, Anya commanded, her voice a deep rumble that vibrated through the rock itself. Flood it, overwhelm the chaos with order. We unleashed a torrent of pure, stable earth energy, amplified and focused by our combined serpent symbols, directly into the swirling vortex of the breach. It was like pouring molten gold into a tar pit. The dark, shimmering energy shrieked, a piercing, soundless scream of pure agony and rage that threatened to shatter my mind. The rock around us trembled, the very air distorting violently. The dark entities within the vortex lashed out, amorphous forms briefly coalescing, attempting to push back to cling to their foothold in our reality. But our combined power was immense, focused, and relentless. Anya's centuries of experience lent an unwavering resolve to our efforts, her presence a bedrock of strength. My own raw, untamed power, now refined by our shared training, surged forth with controlled intensity. The vortex struggled, buckled, and began to shrink, fighting with every ethereal fiber of its being. Tendrils of dark energy whipped out, attempting to drain our power to sever our connection. My nose began to bleed freely, a warm torrent down my face, and my head throbbed with a blinding pain. I gritted my teeth, pushing harder, fueled by the memory of the Mojave, the image of Alina struggling below the weight of the balance. Slowly, inexorably, the dark vortex contracted. Its screams diminished, replaced by a desperate, gurgling sound, a dying gasp of pure malice. The air grew colder, then suddenly shifted, becoming pure, clean, vibrant. With a final, sickening implosion felt more than heard, the breach collapsed in on itself, drawing the last vestiges of chaotic energy inward. Then silence. Profound, absolute silence. Not my usual filtered silence, but the absence of all chaotic energy, a vacuum where the vortex had been. The air grew still, the strange chill dissipated, and the eerie distortions faded. The cave mouth, once a swirling maw of darkness, was now just a normal, dark cave, radiating the ancient, natural energy of the mountain. I collapsed, utterly spent, my hands falling from the rock, my body trembling uncontrollably. Anya, though weary, remained upright, her breath coming in ragged gasps, but her eyes shone with a deep, quiet satisfaction. "It is done, Ben," she said, her voice soft and strained, but filled with triumph. "The breach is closed, the feeder is purged." She turned to me, a faint smile touching her lips. "Another significant victory. You are growing in power and precision, Ben, rapidly." I managed a weak smile, wiping the blood from my nose with the back of my hand. "I think I might need a minute or a day." Below us, the scene in the cove had also changed. The dark tendrils were gone, dissipated into nothingness. Elena stood alone on the rocks, her oceanic shield now calm, the waves lapping gently around her. She looked up at us, her blue eyes shining with relief and awe. "She did well," Anya observed, gazing down at Elena. "Maintained her focus under immense pressure. Her connection to the ocean is truly remarkable." We carefully made our way back down the treacherous path to the cove. Elena rushed to meet us, her face streaked with tears and grime, but her eyes alight with a fierce, untamed joy. She threw her arms around Anya, a gesture of pure gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice raw with emotion. "Thank you. I thought I was losing my mind. I thought I was alone." Anya hugged her back, a rare, tender gesture from the ancient conduit. "You are not alone, Elena, not anymore. We are here, and there are others." Elena then turned to me, her blue eyes so reminiscent of the deep ocean meeting mine. You severed them with light. It was incredible." I felt a flush of awkwardness, unused to such praise, especially after such a profound, draining experience. "We're a team," I managed, my voice still hoarse. "We all played our part." She nodded, a knowing smile playing on her lips. "I felt your power, your serpent. It's like mine, but different, grounded, solid. Mine feels fluid, vast." "The entities choose conduits with diverse strengths," Anya explained, her voice regaining some of its usual calm authority. "Each of us is a unique instrument, necessary for the symphony of the balance. Ben with his deep connection to the Earth's core energies, Elena with her untamed oceanic power, and I with my long-standing resonance with the ancient network itself." We sat on the damp rocks, watching the waves roll in, letting the raw energy of the ocean wash over us, cleansing the lingering psychic residue of the battle. The sun was beginning to dip towards the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and purple. The exhaustion was immense, but it was a satisfying exhaustion, the kind that came after a hard-fought victory. "So what now?" Elena asked, looking from Anya to me, her voice now filled with a new kind of resolve, a quiet strength that had been absent before. "I can't just go back to normal, not after this." Anya nodded slowly. "No, Elena, there is no normal for us anymore. You have been activated. You are a tether, a guardian. Your role in the balance is crucial. The darkness will not cease its efforts. This was but one battle, a successful one, but the war continues." The entities are urging us to continue to consolidate our forces, Anya continued, her gaze sweeping the horizon. The attacks are becoming more organized, more widespread. The western seaboard is not the only region under increased pressure. There are whispers, faint hums of distress from other continents. We need to find other awakened conduits. We need to prepare them, guide them. How many are there? Elena asked, her eyes wide. Many, but scattered. Some are aware, like us. Some are still in the early stages, experiencing strange phenomena, trying to make sense of what is happening to them. And some will be lost. This path is not without its casualties. Anya's voice held a touch of sadness, a profound weariness from long experience. We sensed another cluster of distortions, I interjected, remembering the map in Anya's cabin. Further south in Baja California and deeper into Mexico, they were smaller but numerous. Anya nodded. Precisely, that is our next destination. The Pacific coast, particularly its southern reaches, is experiencing a significant increase in energetic interference. The network there is thinner, more vulnerable, and there's a flicker, a faint, unstable resonance further south near the Baja Peninsula. Another potential conduit, but their signal is chaotic, unstable. It feels like they are struggling, perhaps even being overwhelmed. Elena's face tightened, overwhelmed like I was. Possibly worse, Anya replied, her voice grave. Their resonance flickers almost like a dying ember. We must reach them swiftly before they are consumed or worse, corrupted. The thought of a conduit being corrupted sent a chill down my spine. A powerful instrument twisted into a weapon for the darkness. It was a terrifying prospect. Then we must go, Elena said, her voice firm, resolute. The oceanic power within her seemed to hum with a newfound purpose, a protective instinct. I can help. My connection to the ocean, it extends down the coast. I can feel the currents, the subtle shifts. It could guide us. Anya looked at Elena, a rare smile of approval touching her lips. Indeed, Elena, your unique resonance will be invaluable. We have formed a trio. Earth, water, and the ancient wisdom of the network, a potent combination. The sun finally dipped below the horizon, plunging the cove into twilight. The air grew cool, the oceans roar a comforting, rhythmic pulse in the deepening gloom. We sat there, three conduits bound by an impossible truth, united by a shared purpose. The exhaustion was still heavy, but now it was accompanied by a burgeoning sense of hope. We were no longer fighting alone. We were a team, growing stronger, ready to face the escalating war for the balance. As the first stars began to prickle through the darkening sky, Anya spoke again. We will rest here for the night, consolidate our energy. At dawn, we head south. The journey will be long and the challenges greater, but together we stand a chance. The thought of another journey, another unknown threat, another potentially desperate struggle was daunting. But looking at Anya's ancient, resolute face and Elena's fierce, untamed oceanic eyes, I felt a new surge of determination. The silent war had indeed begun, and we were at its heart. Our path lay south towards more conflict, more awakening, and the ever-present shadow of the encroaching darkness. The first stars had pierced the twilight when a deep, pervasive weariness settled over us. We found a small, sheltered alcove in the rocks, high above the cove, just enough room for our sleeping bags. The roar of the Pacific was a constant lullaby, a sound that now held a new, profound meaning. Elena, still vibrating with a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration, spoke little, her gaze often drifting to the vast, dark expanse of the ocean. Anya, ever practical, distributed high-energy bars and water, insisting we replenish our spent reserves. My own body ached with a deep, bone-weary exhaustion, but beneath it, the serpent symbol pulsed with a quiet, steady strength, a testament to the power we had wielded. Sleep came easily, heavy, and dreamless, a brief respite before the next leg of our unending journey. Dawn broke with a spectacular display of color, painting the sky in fiery oranges and soft purples. The air was crisp, carrying the clean scent of salt and ancient rock. We packed quickly, the Subaru waiting patiently on the cliff above. As we drove south along the coastal highway, the sun climbed higher, illuminating the rugged beauty of the California coastline. The journey into Baja California was a descent into a landscape of stark beauty and increasing energetic interference. The subtle distortions I had perceived before now felt like a low-grade fever infecting the land. They manifested as shimmering heat haze in places where no heat should be, or a faint, unpleasant static that clung to the air, subtly draining my own vitality. Alina, her enhanced senses now fully active and attuned to the water element, registered the disturbances in a different way. "The ocean currents are off," she murmured, her brows furrowed as she stared out at the shimmering expanse. "Not just temperature, but the subtle energetic flows. It's like a wound that's bleeding into the water itself, polluting it." Anya, ever watchful, confirmed our fears. The entities are attempting to destabilize the entire regional network. They learn, they adapt. If direct breaches are contained, they resort to a wider, more insidious approach, slowly poisoning the well. Our target, the flickering resonance of the potential new conduit, grew stronger as we pushed deeper into the Baja Peninsula, past sun-baked deserts and desolate mountain ranges. But the signal was erratic, unstable, a beacon struggling against a powerful current. It felt like a soul in distress, overwhelmed, flickering on the edge of extinction. "Their resonance is unique," Anya noted, her gaze distant as if perceiving the subtle energetic signature. "A connection to the very pulse of the earth, its geological power, tectonic energies, a conduit of the earth's raw, foundational forces. Such power, if corrupted, it could trigger widespread instability." The thought sent a chill down my spine. My own connection to the earth was primarily to its life force, its vibrant flow. But to the tectonic plate energies, the immense destructive power of the planet's core, that was a terrifying prospect if it fell into the wrong hands. The landscape shifted as we entered a region of ancient, volcanic mountains, scarred and rugged, their peaks jagged against the sky. The distortions here were no longer subtle. The very ground seemed to thrum with an unnatural vibration, a low, unsettling tremor that had nothing to do with seismic activity. The air was thick and heavy, laden with a sense of dread. Elena suddenly cried out, pointing towards a remote valley carved into the heart of the mountains. "There, I feel it. It's like a heart struggling for breath, but also being choked." Through my enhanced perception, I saw it too. A vast, churning vortex of dark energy, not unlike the one at Shasta, but far larger, more ancient, and far more insidious. It was centered around a dramatic ancient caldera, its bowl-shaped depression now a cauldron of swirling, chaotic forces. The very rock formations around it pulsed with unnatural light, corrupted. And within that maelstrom, I could sense the flickering resonance of the new conduit, a desperate beacon struggling against the encroaching darkness. "A primary node," Anya stated, her voice grim. "The darkness is attempting to convert a major point of planetary stability into a weapon. They are trying to twist the Earth's own tectonic power against itself. We parked the Subaru off a barely visible track deep in the desolate volcanic foothills. The air grew colder, heavy with a pervasive malevolence. The ground under our feet vibrated with an unsettling hum. The vegetation, sparse and tenacious, seemed to wither, its life force draining away. As we approached the caldera on foot, the true scale of the threat became clear. The vortex of dark energy swirled above the ancient volcanic bowl, a gaping wound in reality, actively siphoning the geological power of the Earth. It pulsed with immense, destructive potential, like a brewing storm that threatened to tear the very ground apart. And within it, almost consumed, was the new conduit. They were a man, perhaps in his late 30s, kneeling on a jagged slab of obsidian at the caldera's center. His body was racked with violent tremors, his face pale and drawn. His hands were pressed to the stone, and from them threads of pure, raw earth energy, incandescent yellow and orange, flowed into the vortex, but they were being immediately consumed, twisted, and regurgitated as dark, chaotic tendrils. He was not just being attacked, he was being actively forced to feed the breach, his own immense power turned against him. "He's being co-opted," Elena cried, a look of horror on her face. "They're trying to turn him into a living breach, to use his own power to unravel the network." "His name is Matteo," Anya said, her voice strained. "He awakened suddenly, powerfully, but without guidance. The darkness found him quickly before he understood his abilities. They are attempting to pervert his gift to make him a conduit of chaos." Matteo's eyes were open, but they were unfocused, filled with a primal terror, a profound exhaustion. He was a prisoner in his own mind, his powerful connection to the earth being used against him. The ground around him cracked and shifted with unnatural tremors, miniature earthquakes threatening to rip the caldera apart. "We need to sever his connection to the vortex and then stabilize him," I said, feeling a surge of protective anger. The memory of my own terror in the Mojave, the loneliness of my awakening, fueled a fierce resolve. "It's too deeply rooted," Anya countered, her gaze sweeping the terrifying scene. "His own resonance is now intimately intertwined with the chaotic energy. Severing it directly could shatter his mind or trigger a catastrophic release of tectonic energy." She pointed to the edges of the caldera. "The darkness has erected powerful energetic anchors around the perimeter, reinforcing the breach, making it almost impervious. We need to dismantle those anchors first, to weaken their hold on Matteo, and then we need to overwhelm the vortex itself, not with brute force, but with a precise, synchronized surge of elemental energy, channeled directly from the earth, amplified by all three of us." The plan was audacious, dangerous. It required perfect coordination, a seamless blend of our unique powers. "Elena," Anya continued, her voice sharp with urgency, "you will go to the western flank. Your oceanic resonance, amplified by Ben's earth energy, can disrupt the energetic field of the anchor there. Then you take the eastern flank. Your raw earth power, reinforced by Elena's fluid energy, can target the corresponding anchor. I will remain here observing Matteo, acting as a central anchor, maintaining a subtle connection to both of you, ready to coordinate our final push." Elena looked at Anya, then at me, her blue eyes filled with a new, fierce determination. "Understood, we won't let them turn him." We split, moving quickly over the broken, volcanic rock towards our designated positions. The air grew heavier with every step, the ground rumbling beneath our feet. The vortex above Matteo pulsed malevolently, spitting out dark tendrils of energy that whipped around us, attempting to impede our progress, to drain our focus. I batted them away with focused bursts of my serpent's power, the amber light flaring brightly. Reaching the eastern flank, I found the anchor. It was a massive, jagged pillar of black obsidian, pulsating with dark, siphoning energy, actively reinforcing the main vortex. I pressed my hands to its cold, malevolent surface, focusing my serpent's energy, preparing to channel. I could feel Alina's presence across the caldera, a vibrant hum of oceanic energy pushing against her own anchor. Now, Anya's voice resonated in my mind, a clear, powerful command. Ben, Alina, synchronize your efforts, channel your combined elemental power into the anchors, overwhelm them. I unleashed a torrent of pure earth energy, amplified by a subtle, almost imperceptible surge of fluid oceanic energy that I could feel emanating from Alina through the network into my own focus. It was an incredible sensation, a seamless integration of two distinct elements. The obsidian pillar shrieked, a soundless, psychic cry of agony and rage as my focused power bore down on it. Dark energy lashed out, attempting to drain me, but the combined strength of earth and water was too much. The pillar pulsed violently, then, with a deafening crack that echoed in my mind, it shattered, dissolving into harmless dust. Across the caldera, I saw a similar flash of light and Alina's triumphant cry. Her anchor had fallen too. The main vortex above Mateo shivered, its hold on him momentarily weakening. He cried out, a real sound this time, a gasp of pain and fear. The dark tendrils around him recoiled, momentarily disoriented. Now Ben, Alina, Anya's voice boomed in my mind, imbued with a fresh surge of power. Converge on Mateo. We must purify him and then flood the breach. This will be our most concentrated effort yet. We rushed towards the center of the caldera, our steps light despite the trembling ground. The remaining dark tendrils swarmed us, but now they were weaker, more disorganized. We swatted them away, our powers flowing with renewed purpose. We reached Mateo, who was now trembling violently, his eyes darting between us, a desperate plea for help. The ground around him was cracking, miniature fissures opening up. The vortex above him pulsed with desperate fury, attempting to reassert its hold. Ben, Alina, Anya commanded, placing her hands on Mateo's shoulders, a surge of grounding, stabilizing energy flowing from her. Place your hands on his back, not to sever, but to purify and realign. Flood his system with pure, untainted earth and water energy. Flush out the corruption. Then we will turn our combined might on the vortex itself. I placed my hands on Mateo's back, feeling the raw, untamed tectonic energy coursing through him, but also the insidious corruption, the twisted tendrils of the darkness woven into his very being. Alina placed her hands beside mine, her touch cool and fluid. Together we pushed. Anya served as our anchor, her ancient resonance stabilizing Mateo, creating a conduit for our combined efforts. I channeled my pure earth energy, a warm, golden river of life, directly into Mateo, seeking out the corrupted strands, severing them, and then healing the energetic wounds. Alina's oceanic energy flowed in, a cool, cleansing current that washed away the lingering psychic residue, purifying his system. Mateo screamed, a primal, guttural sound as the darkness was ripped from him. His body convulsed, struggling against the expulsion, but our combined might was relentless. The dark tendrils wrapped around him shrieked, then dissolved into nothingness like smoke in a strong wind. The unnatural tremors beneath us slowly subsided, replaced by the deep, rhythmic pulse of the earth's natural beat. Mateo slumped forward, utterly spent, his breathing ragged, but the terror in his eyes had been replaced by a deep, profound exhaustion and a dawning sense of clarity. his eyes, now a vibrant, fiery amber, fixed on me, then Alina, then Anya. What happened? He whispered, his voice hoarse. Later, Anya said, her voice firm. Now we finish this. She rose, pulling Matteo gently to his feet, guiding him to stand beside us. His eyes, though weary, now held a deep, resonant power, a formidable connection to the Earth's raw, tectonic forces. He was still weak, but he was no longer corrupted. Matteo, Anya instructed, her voice calm and steady, but imbued with ancient authority. Connect to the true pulse of the earth. Feel its deep, stabilizing power. You are not a weapon of chaos. You are its guardian. Channel your power into the breach, but only after we open the way. Are you ready? Matteo, though still disoriented, nodded, his jaw set with newfound determination. He understood. Anya turned to us, her ancient eyes burning with fierce resolve. Then Alina, Matteo, this will be the most dangerous, most powerful act we have performed yet. We will channel the combined elemental power of earth, water, and tectonic force, amplified by my connection to the network, into the heart of this breach. We will not just close it, we will purge this entire region of the darkness's influence. We will drown it in the very essence of life and order. We formed a circle around the still churning vortex. Matteo, though visibly trembling, stood resolute, his hands outstretched, mirroring ours. His eyes glowed with a fierce, molten amber, a powerful manifestation of his connection to the Earth's core. Now, Anya commanded, her voice ringing with ancient power. Align, merge, unleash the balance. I focused, extending my senses, seeking Anya's steady resonance, Alina's fluid power, and Matteo's raw, foundational might. Our four serpent symbols flared, merging into a single, incandescent beacon of pure elemental energy. The amber of earth, the deep blue of water, the fiery amber of tectonic, and Anya's ancient green, all coalesced into a blinding, multi-hued torrent. We unleashed it. A river of pure, untamed, life-affirming power surged from our combined beings, through our hands, and directly into the heart of the swirling vortex of darkness. It was like a cosmic dam bursting, a deluge of light and order pouring into a void of chaos. The breach shrieked, a deafening, soundless scream that vibrated through the very bedrock of the planet. It recoiled, struggling, lashing out with tendrils of pure malice that threatened to tear us apart. The ground beneath us cracked and buckled, mini earthquakes erupting, the air crackling with immense, uncontrolled energy. My nose began to bleed freely again, my head throbbed, and my vision blurred at the edges, but I held firm, fueled by the unwavering presence of Anya, Alina's fierce resolve, and Matteo's newfound, immense power. The vortex fought back with the desperation of a dying beast, attempting to siphon our energy, to twist our intent. But our combined will, our perfectly synchronized elemental powers, were too immense, too pure. We pushed harder, pouring everything we had into the breach, overwhelming it, flooding it with the very essence of the balance. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, the vortex began to collapse. Its screams diminished, replaced by a gurgling, sucking sound, as if the darkness itself was being pulled back into the void from which it came. The distorted, malevolent energy it radiated dissipated, dissolving like mist in the morning sun. Finally, with a titanic internal implosion that shook the caldera to its foundations, the breach collapsed in on itself. The dark vortex vanished, leaving behind a vacuum of pure, clean energy. The air grew still, the strange chill dissipated, and the unsettling distortions faded. The ancient caldera, once a cauldron of chaos, now pulsed with